For the past decade, many endurance fans have turned away from the high banks of Daytona to the Middle East instead to denote the start of the endurance racing season. The Dubai Autodrome with its 16 turns will be on show again tonight in RaceRoom with an all-new McLaren GT4 on the grid as well. The exciting KTM GTX is here as well, set for 2.4 hours of racing here at a slightly later time of year in late April. Welcome along everybody, my name is Ewan O'Leary alongside Cameron Roger and Zach Sweeney for the evening. Cam, it's great to have you alongside me. It's an exciting circuit, I've got to say. Not a circuit, sorry, I see very much off personally, but I'm glad to see it here, even if it is a little bit of a later time of year.
Absolutely, it's actually a great track to be honest. It's got some very tricky sections, some long straights as well for the slipstream. And as ever, the strategy will come down to it, because you need to be having the tyres underneath your car through some of those sequence of corners. And it's going to be a great race as well, obviously, with a couple of new cars, new iterations of new DLC content. So definitely, at least for the top class, the GTX, as you say, something new for these drivers to be learning.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how today gets on, of course. A couple of familiar faces obviously coming in, as we've sort of come to expect, but a couple of new ones as well into the mix, and quite an interesting circuit as well. New cars and new content obviously to sort of sink our teeth into, the first time we've properly seen them on the big stage, if you'd like. So I think we're in for quite a good couple of hours of racing today.
We certainly are. It's not complicated, as you can see. Qualifying for just under half an hour there, and then we'll be getting into the race as well at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock in Europe, and it will be 2.4 hours. Lots to discuss within that race, as well as to who's going to go furthest. Is Don Fuel, are they going to make it a one-stop? Are they going to have to make two? The mandatory pit stop as well, of course. They'll have to change at least 2 tyres throughout the race here today. That's something to note as they get on with it. But here is a view at the circuit, just over 5 kilometres in length, 16 turns around here, some high-speed ones, some lower-speed ones as well, but not seeing a load of overtaking opportunities. I'm seeing the big one really down in towards turn 10. There's a long straight and a big hairpin, which seems like the perfect recipe to me.
Yeah, and it's also great because of the left-handed corner afterwards, so you can really battle through that sequence of corners. And as ever, coming down to turn 1, although it is a fairly fast corner, sort of a third, maybe second gear corner, but it's still definitely a big braking zone. And also the sort of little back straight coming in towards sector 3, there is that left-handed hairpin as well. So it's definitely some trickier corners around here, and you are going to have to be that little bit smarter, I think, to try and overtake your opponents around it.
For sure, there's a lot of sort of mid-speed corners, does flow quite nicely, and obviously with quite an exclusive place to overtake, you do have to think quite carefully as to what you're doing. Obviously, we got the full extent of the GT4 field, so maybe the car's different strengths and weaknesses might, sort of lend a hand or hinder different cars at different points. And then obviously, with the GTX as well, it's just everyone's fair game, really. You've got to work your way through and be a bit more intelligent. But I think, in all fairness, the pit strategy with the way the circuit sort of is built and is laid out, it's definitely going to lend itself to be a bit more of a deciding factor, because, well, if you can't get the overtaking done on track, you might as well do it in the pit lane.
It is a proper endurance racing circuit. I've got to say, as I mentioned at the start of the broadcast, it's really started to take over in terms of opening the endurance racing season. It seems to happen on about the 1st of January every season, at the 24 Hours of Dubai in real life. We've come here a little bit later on in the year, but it's a fantastic race and a good circuit as well. One of the things we do have to note around here, though, Cam, is a circuit in the Middle East, and there's a lot of tarmac on the outsides of these corners. It's not one of those where you can say no room for error and all that kind of thing. There is a lot of room for error around here, and I wonder whether that is going to maybe alleviate some traffic problems that can arise at some of the circuits.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it's not only actually specifically the amount of runoff, but it's also this sort of like red strip that's right next to the white line, and you can use that in a lot of cases. You can get away, you can be quite sort of liberal with your track limits around here. There's a lot of apexes you can jump over, and you can really start to abuse the track a little bit. But certainly for these cars today, there's not going to be too much of an issue, especially this GT4 car. It's quite compliant, and it's quite a stable sort of category of car compared to some others.
Specifically, really, I think the new edition of the McLaren 570S was sort of, talking with a couple of drivers and things who are actually in the McLaren. They say sort of it is quite a friendly car to get into. It's very good at sort of quite nimble, quite agile, can work its way through some of the sort of the medium speed corners, the flowing corners that we have here today. Obviously, though, with that, the long straight in towards turn number 10 might hinder it just a little bit. So, as I said, I think the extent of the GT4 field is definitely going to lend itself to some pretty good racing. But at least it's obviously not necessarily going to be a case of the GTs getting thrown this way, that way, and all the other ways. Because, well, as I think they're sort of designed to be, they're quite friendly cars to jump into and drive.
They certainly are. For some period of time, actually, the Porsche Cayman there, just on your screen, was the fastest so far in practice. We've actually just gone through into qualifying now, so those results are no longer with us, unfortunately. But we'll bring you up to speed with qualifying in a few moments' time. There is the selection, though, of GT4s to choose from here today, including the new McLaren, which is all new to iRacing. This, though, is the car I'm most excited about, Cam, because it's the GTX, a car that I've not seen in sim racing, I don't think at all, unless I've missed it somewhere. It's just over 500 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, but you were, as I'm told, giving a bit of a go with it a little bit earlier around this track.
Yeah, I thought I'd just give it a few laps earlier today, and it's certainly a very interesting car. It's pretty fast in a straight line, actually. I didn't compare it directly with sort of the normal GT3 category that we do, but it certainly can get us up to well over 260 k's down the back straightaway here. So certainly plenty fast enough, around sort of 11 seconds a lap faster than our GT4 category as well. But one thing that personally I struggled a little bit with is the rear end does sort of move around a lot, so you're going to have obviously maybe a bit of setup coming into that, and also a bit of driving style to really make sure that you're not sort of overheating those rear tyres. But at the same time, that means the front is quite understeery. You've got to be careful not to push too much on those front tyres. We're looking at, as you said earlier, potentially a one-stop strategy around here, so you need to be going well over an hour on a set of tyres. So that's definitely something that the drivers need to consider.
Not forget, obviously, how tricky on tyres the Dubai Autodrome is going to be as we take a look at the entry list, obviously. But yeah, I think the KTM, not only is it quite a fast car, it also looks quite cool as well.
It certainly does. I'm a big fan, I've got to say. And these are the drivers who will be taking to the track with it here today. Cody Nikolakowski, the furthest up those in the rating standings. These guys, by the way, ordered by rating. So you can see who are the real contenders here in GTX. Latkowski, by the way, currently topping qualifying, just to let you know. And in the GT4 category as well, Enzo Filippo with the best ranking to his name, with Rui Felipe up there as well. Max Sabdir got the best lap time in during the first round of times. They're obviously going through some more right now, but there's some very, very recognisable names here. A lot of names that we obviously have seen a lot of in recent times here, coming with the RaceRoom Rank Championship and other special events as well, which Latkowski in particular up there is no stranger to actually winning.
Indeed, it's a very high-strength field, and I think that's going to just bring out a really great race today. As you say, especially like those Mackenberg brothers, they always seem to get up in these special events as well. And of course, Lino there on that right-hand side, who often makes a lot of the promos and trailers and things that you see as well. So yeah, definitely a big community event for this, and it's great to see a good turnout. And even on one of the earlier pages, there was almost 900 people participating in the actual sort of hot lap qualifier to get yourself into these races as well, because there's obviously other splits going on at this same time. So it's great to see that so many people are signing up.
It's great, obviously, to see the massive community side of things for events like these. Obviously, we've had it throughout the year, and in all fairness, about the entire ranks sort of system in of itself. The rank championship had the lower divisions as well, so it just means that it's not necessarily an exclusive hierarchy for all the top guys get into the top split, and they're the ones that obviously get to have all the fun. It means that everyone can get involved, get to try some of the new content with in a competitive nature as well, and just means that they can all have a bit of fun. But obviously, that comes down to the willingness of the community, and it seems that quite a few people have decided that 2.4 hours at Dubai are something they want to spend their Friday evening doing.
And why not as well? Certainly, Marvin Mackenberg there, you can just see going over the line. He'll jump up to second, or stay in second, I should say. Currently behind Cody Nikolakowski in the GTX qualifying standings. It's just under 20 minutes remaining in this one. Enzo Filippo currently leading in the GT4 category right now. There you can see Daniel Burker actually in the KTM as well. Not one of those who we saw there, I believe, or not one of those who we see too much of, but is right up there right now. Third place, just ahead of Sven Mackenberg on the second row currently. Some bigger gaps further down than that. By the way, the rating these days has taken into account the reputation a little bit more. It's become a little bit more important in terms of your rating in recent times, so I'm told. I'm not entirely sure on how the maths works myself, because that's well, I don't really understand, but it's a little bit more important, and so that's how we figure out quite who was where in that entry list there. So there we are. But in terms of the names who we think are going to be right up there and winning this one, then we certainly know who they are. And we don't just have KTMs in the GTX category only, Cam. They seem pretty strong in the GT4s as well, because we've got second and third currently taken up by KTM, along with Goodwin as well, who's currently down in 10th place.
Yeah, of course, the two different variants. Now we do have this, Ewan, when we have this with the GTEs and GT3s with the two Porsches, and we're going to get it today with the KTM Crossbow as well, being in two different classes. This is the GT4 one. you can see on your screen. Now, they should be sort of recognizable to be different, especially like with the headlights, but definitely look out for that. There are the 2 different types of KTMs, and also in GT4s, remember to look out for that McLaren, which we do have about 3 in the top 11 as it stands, with the highest being Alex Mosin there, sixth place and half a second off. But of course, with 17 minutes left in the qualifying, I'm sure we're going to see some of these lap times improve a little bit, especially those drivers a bit further down. They'll get some more laps under the belt, as Noj there going up into 10th place.
Yeah, so obviously here we go. Here's Philip Howe at the moment for Lotus, taking the top step ahead of Stoffmill. Only about about 900ths of a second between the pair of them, so not a lot in it whatsoever. But it will be interesting to see sort of how the differences in chassis choice for the GT4 sort of plays its hand over the course of the 2.4 hours. Obviously, the balance of performance adjustments have been made to make the field as close as possible. So you can always choose your favorite car and at least be a little bit competitive with it, but there's always some variation, so we'll have to wait and see as to which one reigns supreme. And at the moment it seems that in all fairness, it's quite a diverse set of choices. We've got different cars well and truly into the mix, and Mark, that's only positive things to see.
On board at the moment with Mike Stockmiller at the moment in second place, and a couple of personal best sectors in those first 2. As you can see, some good graphics here this afternoon, which we're very much enjoying right now on the left-hand side. Obviously have that lead for the race as well, but Filippo there just goes a little bit quicker as well. He extends his margin to just over a tenth of a second. Stockmiller going to try and respond here as he comes over the line, and he will get closer again here. 65 thousandths of a second. It's not much, but as we hit the halfway stage in the qualifying session, Filippo still clearly has a little bit more to give, and a little bit more than Stoffmill just behind, and Orban indeed as well in the lights they're in, because he's just improved, and there's a couple of purple sectors still coming in even at this stage.
Yeah, let's see this good on board here with Kotsky's run the new KTM GTX, using all off the curb. In many of these corners you can really run wide and abuse those apexes. It's very lenient, as we were saying a little bit earlier. This corner is so difficult, it's so long, and you've got to wait and then turn in all over the curve once again, get back to the throttle, and it's really just dancing on that rear end. And also this corner here coming out onto the back straight, it's so important to get the run, because of course you keep your momentum all the way down the straight, so if you get a bad exit, you lose time on the delta all the way down this straight in towards the hairpin. Certainly the rear end wiggling about a bit there for the Kotsky.
It's not great when you've got so many corners where you sort of have to brake and then turn and then sort of slow down a little bit more, then turn again. It just doesn't make for a very pleasant handling experience. I haven't personally driven the new KTM just yet, but it certainly looks like a bit of fun to do so. But the Dubai Autodrome definitely got a couple of tricky spanners into the works to really make things difficult, particularly in qualifying and obviously over the course of the 2.4-hour races. But here in qualifying, obviously the precedence is that you've got to nail each and every single one of the 3.3 miles that we've got around the Dubai Autodrome, and well, it's very easy to overstep the mark just a little bit and completely throw away that entire lap, which means that you've got to go again. Fortunately though, Ewan, they've got quite a long time in qualifying, which is quite a luxury to have sometimes.
It is half an hour around here, which is quite some amount of time. Now, I've picked up a bit of interesting chatter in the YouTube chat, and feel free to interact with us, by the way, as you're watching on here this afternoon. Alexander Grunwald has joined us, did particularly well in one of the RaceRoom Ranked Championships that was using the GT4s. I think he might have won that as well. But very experienced RaceRoom driver, and we know him well. Mentioned that he's surprised Enzo Filippo has chosen the Lotus today because it's not the fastest, and Porsche and BMW are probably a better choice. I always don't trust people when they say these kind of things, because I feel like they're playing with us, because everybody talks about BOP and which car's fastest and whatever. Do you pay much attention to these kind of things, Cam? Especially if you're a driver, would you really look into these things, or would you just go for what you're comfortable with?
I think a lot of it, especially when you have this much car choice, that also means there's quite a big range of feel. Every different car has a slightly different balance to it. There's some are front engine, some are rear engine, some are mid engine, and all that sort of thing. So you definitely got to find one you're comfortable with. And if you are comfortable, you'll already have a couple of tenths there compared to another car. And in general, the BOPs I find, not just on RaceRoom, but on loads of simulators, they're actually close enough nowadays that as long as you, as long as you're comfortable, as long as you can drive the car, you're going to be able to be fast. If someone else, even if they're in a faster car than you on paper, and that's the only reason why they take it, if they can't make it work, if they can't get the lap time out of it themselves, they can't use that potential, then of course they're just going to be slower. And even though he's the only one in the Lotus, he is on the provisional pole position, and the likes that he was saying, like the Porsche, is half a second off. So certainly a good choice so far. As we see Zabdir come across the line, he improves 1.5 tenths of Filippo up the front. So definitely Lotus KTM looking quick here.
Absolutely. Obviously, talking a bit about Mariusz Zabdir, he's come runner-up a couple of times, most notably, I think, the Daytona 2.4 back in January. I was speaking to him a little bit earlier on. He's aspiring for a little bit more. He's hoping to finally etch himself into P1 for one of these ranked events. Obviously, he's a very, very fast driver. See him a lot sort of in the TCRs, and and actually, to be fair to him, he drives quite a lot of different things, and while he's proven to be quite quick here right now is the pole, but he's got a little bit more to try and find, at least to sort of the benchmark of the other KTM of Stoffman inside the top three, just under a tenth between the gap of them. But Mariusz Zabdir, always a consistent driver, always quite a fast driver, and while qualifying definitely isn't going to speak about the entire race that we've got ahead of us, but hopefully for him, he can maybe try and find just a little bit extra to see himself, just take that one extra step that he needs to take victory.
Absolutely. This is Farkas coming over the line, still 3 tenths away and down in 5th place in the Mercedes right now, that has taken the biggest hit in terms of BOP, by the way, or at least the biggest hit in terms of weight. I apologise. 21 kilograms of ballast on board that car, but no power taken off of it. The McLaren with 17 kilos is the next heaviest. The rest of them very minimal. Audi and KTM have got 7, the rest of them lower than 3. So it's not too much weight added, but we do have a little bit less power for the BMW, the McLaren, and the 2 Porsche variants of the Cayman as well. So there's a lot of balancing going on. But as Cam mentioned a few moments ago, it's very, very balanced out. 5 manufacturers inside the top 6 in GT4 right now, including this new McLaren that has been just included into RaceRoom in the last, in the very recent past. Ian Egan at the wheel of this one right now in 9th place, 1.1 seconds away from the current pole position, 2 minutes 7.2, and that is roughly just over 10 seconds slower than the GTX cars, which will plenty of lap traffic to be negotiated here this afternoon. But nice to see on board here with the McLaren, just to see how it handles. And I'm aware that you were driving this one as well, Cam, actually a little bit early on. You said it was, I guess, typical GT4 is the kind of vibe I got from what you said earlier on after driving this.
Yeah, I actually quite like it, to be honest. It's pretty well balanced. The gearing is really nice, and just from the get-go, the default setup seems pretty nice. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's some extra you can extract out of it, but it's just a car you can just jump in and drive, and I think that's the real lure of the GT4s in general. Actually, they're just that little bit more tamed down from loads of cars that we see, like, as we mentioned earlier, the GTs, the GT3 category that we obviously see quite a lot. But you come down to GT4s, and they're just that little bit sort of underpowered, but they still have quite a lot of grip in the corners. So they almost feel like a bit of a go-kart with that sort of balance of the amount of speed that you can take into the corners compared to how fast they are in a straight line. But again, they're 9 tenths, almost a second off the pole as it stands, and about 6 tenths off Mosin, who is the fastest McLaren as we speak. And Stoffmill there is half a tenth ahead of Filippo actually at the front, so he's put in a good lap in that KTM.
Has indeed been able to step up the mark just a little bit versus Enzo Filippo, but you have to bet that it's not over, still with just under 9 minutes left to go in the qualifying session, and less than 2 tenths of a second separate the top 3 of Stoffmill, Filippo and Zabdir. I think it is going to be a pretty interesting fight for pole position between those 3 in the GT4s, which is what we love to see, and it'd be great for KTM to get 2 poles across the 2 classes. Obviously it's a bit unfair to say that, obviously, because the KTM GTX class only has KTMs, funny enough. But it's a bit unfortunate that Nikola Lotowski has got about 2.5 tenth advantage over Sven Mackenberg, because it would be nice to have a bit of a closer fight in that regard for that class. But at least the GT4s are putting on a pretty interesting show in terms of qualifying today.
They really are, and I've got to say, I wasn't expecting to see this actually in qualifying. I tend to not enjoy these longer qualifying sessions, to be honest, unless they're like really long, like 2 hours, like you get at Le Mans, I suppose. But other than that, I don't tend to like them very much because I tend to feel that after 10 minutes or so, this standard of driver has kind of reached their limit in terms of lap time, and everybody's kind of where they will be for the next 20 minutes in this case. But that's really not been the case so far in this qualifying session. They've just seemed to get faster and faster and faster as it's gone along, and Stoffmill right now has half a tenth advantage. Filippo with plenty of time to really give it a go as well here. As you can see, the track map, another new feature that we've got here for this evening's broadcast, and we'll especially be able to see this during the race cam because there's only 12 GTX cars, but there's nearly double that in the GT4 category. It's certainly more than 1.5 times as many GT4s. That means generally quite a lot of traffic, really.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the speed difference as well is going to be quite a big factor, because that means that if you get stuck behind, as a GTX car, if you get stuck behind a GT4, you effectively lose more time because the speed difference is so much. However, they should also have plenty of power to just absolutely blast past them on the straights, so they'll need to be working out. And generally here, the track is pretty wide. There should be plenty of space for everyone, but we will see how that one goes, because as we mentioned, there's a few tighter, awkward sections of the track. Even just like here, we'll see Lino come through in towards turns, the sort of 2 and 3 sequences where it gets tight. It turns into sort of chicane, and you're gonna have to try and fight for your place on the track, which is always easier said than done.
It's always something we talk about when it comes to sort of traffic management. It doesn't really matter what circuit you go to, there's always something to talk about. You could have a track as wide as an airport, and it probably wouldn't actually be enough for drivers to work their way through cleanly. So yeah, they've definitely got to be careful, and the sheer grid size of the GT4s is definitely going to be a bit of a worry for the GTXs. So we'll wait and see as to what effect that has exactly on the overall effect on the race, but you have to bet that it's probably going to be in the reaches of someone at some point getting stuck behind a GT4, and then at some point getting passed by one of their rivals because of it. But again, we'll wait and see. I think the Dubai Autodrome, as Cam said, very wide, very spacious, so they should, in theory, be all right. But then again, these are racing drivers, and they don't always listen to the ideals, and sometimes things can go a little bit haywire.
And a new fastest time from Enzo Filippo again. He was purple in the first sector, personal best in the second, and he's gone to the front. It's a 2 minute 7.1, and it's another half tenth of a second advantage as Stoffmill goes off the road, and I believe he's gone off track and invalidated his lap time here. And so this one won't count for him, I don't think. But that is another late improvement from Filippo. There's just over 5 minutes to respond here for the KTM, but that lap time there comes showing that this session is going to go right down to the end. They're going to continue to trade lap times for the next 5 minutes by the looks of things.
And it's half a tenth at a time, which is insane around here. Obviously in the slightly slower cars as well, it's not very much time, very much distance at all is the difference there. So great to see. It's going to be a very close race, and hopefully that continues, of course, over the 2.4 hours, and I'm sure it will. We have to see how these drivers, of course, work out their strategy and how they want to focus on that. So it's not just about the qualifying pace, but it is going to be their consistency over the course of a stint that's well over an hour long. You've got to be making sure you keep consistent and keep the tyres underneath you. So you see Egan here, massive slide there. That's too much, and that lap is going to be having to be reset, and that just shows you how you can overpush these cars still.
Even the fact that they are obviously quite easy to jump into, obviously, so overstep the mark and the car will not like it whatsoever. So yeah, definitely proven that mistakes can happen even towards the top flight of RaceRoom esports, and well, just goes to show, in all fairness, how tricky the Dubai Autodrome is in of itself. And well, that's exactly what we're talking about in terms of consistency. A mistake like that in the race could be the difference between winning, losing the top 5, or not getting inside the top 5, etc., etc. There's a lot of variables that come into a factor, and one of the things that you can control mostly is not spinning, so you really do have to be careful. And the mandatory sort of pit stop regulation is the fact you have to take 2 tyres. So if you aren't opting to take the whole set of 4, you are going to have to take at least 2 of them all the way to the end of the race. Whether that happens or not, we'll soon find out. But if that is the case, it does mean that tyre conservation is going to play a bit of a factor, especially at a circuit like this, which, in all fairness, the heat and the flowing nature of it, very quite some high speed, low speeds, heavy braking zones as well. It is going to put a lot of strain on those tyres, and well, a spin here and there definitely isn't going to help.
Yeah, we're going to get into the strategy talk a little bit more as we get on with the race in a few moments' time, because it is wide open, really. I would say in terms of strategy, or at least it's going to keep us interested during this one. I've got no doubt about that. On the left-hand side right now, you can see, by the way, the ratings of the driver just next to the time gap to the leader. You can see or their class leader. You can see their rating, more or less in order, especially in the GTX category. Few jumping up in GT4, particularly the likes of Stoffmill, who's currently on the front row, and also D'Amico as well, in the 7th place there in the GT4s, with one of the lower ratings of anybody actually, but he's done a decent job there to get up into the top 10 so far in qualifying. But for just how much that means by the end of this race, well, absolutely nothing really. Any of these guys can still win this from this point, and it will be a long race that you can, of course, recover a poor qualifying, although you would rather, of course, avoid it. 2 minutes to go, and there's a few more chances here, Cam, for new lap times to go on, but we're not seeing very many purple sectors anymore.
Yeah, it's certainly difficult to keep on pushing at the limit after 30 minutes. You don't want to wear yourself out, and especially when you talk about the absolute limits. It's so easy to go half a tenth faster, like we saw Filippo do, but in that case, it's also easy to go half a tenth slower. If you make a little bit of a mistake, it's certainly very difficult to keep that going. With 1.5 minutes left, you need to be on your lap now, because when we get to 0, we will be moving quickly towards the race session. You have to get your lap finished inside the time, so you need to be on that lap now. So Bien, that we're seeing on the screens right now, he will not be able to finish this lap, having started it a little bit too close. That's definitely something to factor in. A few purple sector 1s coming in the GT4 category with Egan and Goodwin, but they're not improving in that second sector and not being able to keep that speed through to improve their time overall.
Which goes to show that the potential definitely is there for a couple of drivers, Egan and Goodwin, and also Bozo in P18. The potential is there for the first sector for them to maybe sort of first man into the works. But what separates the good from the great, the likes of Philipp and Stoffmill towards the top end of the qualifying sheets, is the fact that they can hook up the entire lap and do that sort of on a lap by lap basis, which is fantastic. But here we go for 2.4 hours. This is how they're going to rack up.
It certainly is. Cody Likolakowski looks like he's going to take pole position here. There was a lap time to come in from Marvin Mackenberg, who stayed behind his brother Sven, though, who will be on the front row with him. Marvin Mackenberg does get to 3 tenths away, but he will be third. Daniel Burker will be 4th ahead of Timo Lino. Then it will be Ecott joining him on row 3. Pippa and Bian on row 4. Smeeks and Wilson just behind that inside the top 10, with Koulis and Butler rounding out the GTXs. Then by just half a tenth of a second, it's Enzo Filippo who takes the GT4 qualifying ahead of Stoffmill. Zabdir will be along with Alex Moisen on the second row, with Farkas and Orban in the 3rd and 4th position. Behind that, Luca D'Amico, Rui Felipe is up there, Christoph Noj, Luca Verfricht. Before we get to Andy Goodwin, you can see just in front of the likes of, everybody there who you can see in the qualifying results. Going too quickly for me to say, but there we are. It's my fault. So there we are. But there are the rest of them. At the bottom of the GT4 order. It was significantly closer, I've got to say, in GT4. I think there were 8 or 9 within a second there, which couldn't quite be said of the top cap.
GTX literally days old pretty much at this point, so hopefully the drivers will get a hold of that, and we'll have to find out, of course, how they're going to work out this race strategy. The 2.4 hours are generally very awkward because, as ever, if it was a 2-hour race, it'd be nice and easy, 1 hour stint each without any difficulties. But with the 0.4, you want to be making sure you can probably just squeeze in those extra laps, do a bit of fuel saving, and get to a one-stop, so you don't have to come through the pit lane twice. But of course, we'll have to see if anyone tries anything bold when we get about a third of the way into the race.
Obviously, it's not going to be necessarily easy with the 2.4 hours being a little bit awkward, but it does sort of open up the range that you can use. Are people going to stretch it and save a bit of fuel and go for the one stop? Are people going to change tyres? Are they going to risk the two stop late on with a bit of a splash and dash? It all sort of comes down to driver preference, maybe what car you chose in the case of the GT4s, potentially also with that, also your circumstance. How hard are you fighting with different drivers? At different points in the race, how much fuel, how much tyres do you use at different points as well? So yeah, definitely a very interesting dynamic in terms of strategy, and we've seen plenty of times before in the case that there are plenty of different ways to actually funnel down to the same point. We've seen very, very close finishes with two wildly different strategies.
We certainly have, and it's an awkward distance as well, I've got to say. 2.4 hours, it translates to 2 hours 24 minutes, which is not a round number by any means, and so it does mean that things are pretty difficult to work out. So we'll see what they decide to go for, as Zach just said, whether it's going to be a two-stop race or whether we're going to get one in the middle. Are they going to be able to save the amount of fuel in time or not? Well, all that is to come, and all that is for us to find out over the course of the race. It's the Dubai 2.4 hours here on RaceRoom, and we'll bring you all the action here with the GTXs at the front, the GT4s just behind, and a rolling start down towards turn number one. Cody Nicola Latkowski with the pole position converted into a race start lead. He will hope as the lights go green at Dubai. We're underway here, and the Mackenbergs just in behind. Lepkowski will try and take this one away from him immediately. Down in towards turn one they will go. They'll all funnel their way through. The GTX is in front. It's steaming through the middle from Daniel Berger, who will try and get through up into second place already here. Marvin Mackenberg's had a bit of a nightmare as Timo Lino gets through up into fourth place as well. Pipper down his inside. They'll run through the first sector for the first time. It was bravery from Daniel Berger, who not only took first place but nearly took second as well.
A dreadful start for Marvin Mackenberg there, losing 2 places, just absolutely outgunned there in towards turn one. Berger really risked it actually, considering it is a mini endurance race, going 3 wide in towards turn one, but it works out in the end. We go back to the GT4 category and try and work out how we're going to ship it. This a little bit further back with Egan now on the outside towards this back straightaway into the position ready to notch. You managed to get up there in towards 9th place, but now the section is going to be in effect down the back straight.
It is indeed who are going to make those big moves. Here's Marvin Mackenberg trying to make up for what was quite a poor start, in all fairness, for the German, trying to get his way back up towards the front alongside his brother. Looking to work his way past Lino, but no way through for now. And there's a spin in the background. Is that Smikes there tumbling down the order?
Yeah, it was. He's not the first GTX actually to have problems on this opening lap, by the way. We've got Derek Koulas as well, with a long way down the order right now. And you're right, Anthony Smix is off the road and down the order quite significantly. Sebastiano Rossi as well, actually, in the GT4s, has also had problems on this opening lap, and he's dropped a few seconds off the back of the rest of the field. But other than that, it's not been too bad in terms of a start here. You do sometimes get a real compression and a funneling of the cars down towards turn number one. As the pit exit comes out there, it can really start to feel quite narrow on the run downhill, and the downhill braking zone always spells for trouble as well. But it wasn't a bad start, and especially for the 2 leaders. Enzo Filippo and Cody Nicola Latkowski have both held on to their leads, although I've got to say Filippo's lead is a lot more slender here in GT4.
Yeah, he's definitely got Zabda all up behind. That is looking like it's going to work out to be a very nice battle, as we're seeing a little bit further down with the GTX is having to already get past some of the traffic after obviously having a bit of an issue early on. That must have been Smeeks, who of course spun about half a lap ago. Filippo, though, coming through this first sector of the track, is getting about half a second ahead. They're starting to get a little bit comfortable, but even more comfortable at the front is Latkowski, almost a second now, coming up towards the end of sector 1 on lap number 2, as Berger is himself trying to get on the back of Mackenberg.
I'm afraid we've also had problems for Radoslav Piatkowski down the back of the GT4 field in the BMW. He's dropped from mid-pack to 18th, I'm afraid. Rossi has had even more problems. He's down in the pit lane, clearly, at the end of this lap. And so clearly there's been some more problems there. But lots of Lots of things going on early on, and here it comes Kulas through the order, I believe it is. It is indeed 10th place in the GTX field already, trying to come through here at the end of this one. So we'll see what happens here, but it's very close in GT4, Zach.
It really is. It's fantastic to see, obviously, with the variety of car choices and things like that. But obviously, the first way through traffic is always the scariest, and that's exactly what Kulas has to do because, well, unfortunately, a spin on the first lap is usually put behind the massive train of GT4 machinery. And, well, that is certainly one way to use the full extent of the circuit. I don't exactly know that's the choice line I'd go for. He's got plenty of space, but, well, for some reason, wanted a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's... You're not exactly running out of space around here, I've got to say. But there we are. Back to the front of GTX. Nikolakowski with 1.1 seconds at the end of 2 laps. Sven Mackenberg it is, just in the second position. And I've got to say, I'm a little bit surprised, not only that Marvin Mackenberg has lost these positions on the start cam, but also that he's not really been able to regain them so far. And he's a couple of seconds away, actually, from Timo Lino in 4th.
These things can like spoil your rhythm a little bit, because of course he would have been coming in that 3rd place, assuming he'd be sat there behind his brother and having quite a controlled start to the race. But all of a sudden, Birkenlino just dived down the inside, coming through the first couple of corners, and he's got to try and regain that composure. It is a bit more difficult to do so, especially when you've got Ekot there coming up in behind as well. So definitely needs to try and calm that one down, because you don't want to be getting too far away before you start to sort of start to not believe that you can keep up. But definitely the top 6 starting to break away a bit now in this new GTX category, and it's great to see it here in RaceRoom. And let's see how this one works out. Of course, we're mentioning the strategy side of things, and I'm very intrigued to see what these guys are going to do. Burke there, though, running a little bit wide into the hairpin, just losing a few tenths to Mackenberg.
So obviously, as we've said, this car is very, very new. These guys haven't really had an extensive amount to really get accustomed to the circuit and the car, and obviously the circuit combination in of itself. So obviously inexperience and experience is definitely going to come to the limelight with that one. Here we go, a very, very close fight between Philipp Hau and Marius Zabdir in the fight for first. Also got Moisen and Stoffmill into the mix. Farkas isn't too far away either. Bit of a breakaway relative to Christian Orban for P6 at the moment, however. But, well, Philipp Hau, he's definitely got his work cut out for him if he wants to hang on to his pole position, because, well, Marius Zabdir, Moisen and Stoffmill, all of whom have got something to prove, something they want to chase for, is, well, quite a dangerous prospect, particularly this early on in the race.
Well, Marius Zabdir here looked fairly all right. He was up there in qualifying, but by no means was he challenging for pole, really. Now that we've got into the start of this race, he's absolutely taken off here and is, or was, putting a lot of pressure onto Enzo Filippo on this particular lap, especially through turn 8 and 9, the long looping left-hander that sets you up for the back straight. He didn't quite have the slipstream really in the ideal positioning for a move in towards turn 10. And so the Frenchman holds on to the lead through 3 laps now. But it's been a decent start from the pole, as we see Smeeks. This is coming through on everybody in the GT4 category. Kind of hesitant to get involved in this leading battle, really, as Zabdir defended from Moisen there. We're starting to see the differences in the handling, really, of these two cars, Cam, because it's no doubt that the GTX is really fast in a straight line, but it's not really, it's arguably worse in some of the corners.
Yes, definitely more difficult to drive, and as you're right, maybe not able to use that extra speed to their advantage, because of course if you're coming into the corners faster, if you don't have the ability also in the corners, you then have to slow down more effectively as well. So let's see how this one works, coming onto the back straight through this pretty long left-handed corner, actually. And nice to see that these GT4s have got 3 different classes in the top 3 as it stands. But Filippo there starting to just pull away the tiniest bit through sector 1 on this lap, as we're seeing they're trying to come over, Zabdir trying to come over on the other KTM GTX, trying to get a bit of slipstream, but you see there just a good sort of 100 meters or so gained on the back straight with the extra speed that the GTX has on the GT4s. And as it stands as well with these GT4s, we're looking at a very close battle, top 5, just 2 seconds separating them.
brilliant to see. Absolutely loving this. And well, it's also awesome, as Cam said, to see 3 different manufacturers inside the top 3, 4 inside the top 5. So KTM are definitely having a good day in the office with 2 cars inside the top 5, of course. And well, it's brilliant. It's obviously for them being the sort of the limelight of today's event, I suppose. But yeah, brilliant stuff. Moisen at the moment holds the fastest lap. He's sat in 3rd place. Not really any way that he can find much of a way through relative to Filipao and Zabdir. I think maybe relying on a bit of a fight manufacturing, which is potentially what could be happening here. Is Filipao versus Zabdir is certainly a battle that you're going to want to feast your eyes into, because well, it's definitely going to be one to remember. And well, if anything happens, Moisen's there on the scene ready to pick up the pieces.
Certainly, it's a real yo-yo battle at the moment, I've got to say. It's not really long periods of sustained pressure from Zabdir. He goes from the back of Filippo to all of a sudden looking over his shoulder at Moisin. But now we start to get a little bit of a view as to why Zabdir is finding this so difficult right now. The KTM so nimble through the corners. And you could probably tell that by just looking at it, to be honest. It just looks like a nice car to drive, and it looks like it can corner well. It's so low slung and so effective through this long right-hander at turn 3. But then when you get down here, well, it's pretty good here as well. But when they get onto the back straight, as we saw there, Zabdir seemed to be going absolutely nowhere. So he has to do it in the corners. Oh, it's down the inside. Filippo tried to turn in, tried to close the door, but Zabdir was already alongside. He's already through, but the Lotus Evora has so much more power.
Oh, wow, that was a very tight part of the track. As we've been mentioning, the track is wide, but the actual racing line gets so tight, and that is Zabdir up into 1st place. Mosin now is under attack from Stoffmill as well for that 3rd and 4th place. Top 4 all having a big battle here. Let's see the speed of this Lotus down the back straightaway, as we're seeing Zabdir just hard defending now, comes back towards the racing line, but it's Filippo who can break later. But is that too late? Yes, it is, and we're going to get now Mosin coming up, trying to battle for this 2nd place.
Beautiful stuff here, and it is astonishing how much quicker in a straight line that Lotus is. But Marius Zabdir had the measure in order to hold firm, didn't get too shocked by how late Filipao was braking. He trusted his guts, trusted his car, and in the end it worked out well for him. Filipao able to hold off the offensive maneuvers from Mosin, so keeps him in 2nd place, keeps him in contention. But yeah, you can definitely tell where the strengths lie in that Lotus, and well, Filipao has surely got to use that to full effect if he wants to launch a counter-attack. He knows where that car is quicker, and well, I guess if you're able to stay close enough through the corners, which I don't really think he is, Marius Zabdir has sort of got the measure due to the KTM able to keep it nice and nimble through and build the gap. Is it big enough of a gap, though, that Filipao can't then just put his foot to the floor and close it back down the next straight?
I don't know. It's more than half a second at the moment, and it grows to 3/4 of a second as they exit the final turn. Now Filippo is going to get the slipstream again, but Zabdir knows the score. He knows that he has to break the slipstream, but he probably didn't even need to weave there. He's got quite some gap at the moment. Now I think we're starting to see, Cam, why this Lotus Evora took pole in qualifying, but maybe it's not the best race car in the world, because it's unrealistic to expect of any driver, I think, let alone in a field like this. I think it's unrealistic of any driver to expect that you can sit in the front and hold on with a car like this for 2 hours and 24.
Absolutely. There's definitely 2 different sorts of things that you need to look when you're talking about BOP. It's not just about the qualifying speed, it's about the consistency of the car and its ability to be driven and to race as well. And as you say, maybe that Lotus isn't the best. That's what we're hearing from Grimvard, you were saying in the comments as well. So definitely something that we're going to see over the course of the next 10 minutes or so, if these drivers of Mosin, Stoffmill, even Farkash in behind, if they can try and get past him as well. The issue is on the straightaway, you can just see that gap on the top left of your screen just coming down and down and down. It's in the background. We're seeing Farkash there diving it down the inside in towards the hairpin. Can he get up the inside of Stoffmill side by side on the apex between the 2? Space given on the outside, and this is a great part of the track to have a side-by-side battle, but it seems that Stoffmill can hold on.
He can indeed. Farkash was a good attempt, of course, but he's got the up and under, potentially running his way through the next part. No way through to the inside of the following right-hander, but brilliant battle going on. And I think Filippo's just got enough in terms of straight line speed to hang on to Zabdir. Not enough, obviously, to really mount any pressure, but sort of enough to say, you know what, yeah, I'm still here. Any mistake you make, and I'll be on your case. Look at Farkash actually closing the gap to Stoffmill, sort of in the slipstream, but again, still no way through. But I think we've got a very, very good GT4 battle ahead of us. We've got sort of the top 5 separated by not really much, and is that Wilson having a spin in the GTX?
I think it is. He's dropping down. Is Jake Wilson out the final into the first turn? I should say. Is he? I'm not sure, but he's dropping down. Oh no, indeed a bit further around than that, in towards turn 7. That is, and goes off the road again. Clearly, some scorching hot tyres now after going for that spin there, but he's at least still on the road and still facing forwards for now. Enzo Filippo applies the pressure again. This is what we were seeing actually when Zabdir was right behind. He tended to yo-yo off the back of the Lotus, but now the KTM is in front. I didn't think we'd see the same phenomenon. We are, though, for whatever reason. And just about a quarter of an hour into this one, they're still battling 1 and 2. I have to say I was expecting Zabdir to drive absolutely away. That's not happened as of right now.
Oh, yeah, massive hit on the curve there. Just shows you how difficult it is to be consistent, to be honest. And definitely one thing I was experiencing when I did some laps in the McLaren earlier, just with the way that so many of these corners are long, you have to enter the corner correctly because you're sitting there for such a long time that if you're making mistakes and the car's sliding, etc., then you just can't keep the speed going throughout the corner. And of course, as the stint progresses and the tyres get a little bit more worn, they get a little bit more heat into them as well. That is just going to be even more difficult. But as it stands, these top 5 just sitting in a line for now, but they're definitely all just waiting for the opportunity to pounce on the driver ahead.
That's the thing. Obviously, it's a long race with quite a heavy focus on the strategy. So why, go all guns a blazing in the first half an hour when you know full well that's not going to decide the race itself? There's still a long way to go. Consistency and a good strategy is going to reign supreme. And well, if you fight too early on, you might actually ruin your chances to benefit from a good strategy or good consistency because, well, you're too far back to really capitalize off anything that does happen. But at least for now, we can sort of enjoy it before they all sort of tangent off and do their own things in terms of strategy. And for the opening 30 minutes, we are for sure being spoiled, but maybe sort of people are settling down just a little bit and not necessarily being proactive in terms of battles, more reactive in the sense that if there's a mistake and there is an opportunity, then obviously again they're going to take it, but no one really too interested, at least over the course of the last sort of 5 minutes or so, in actually forcing the initiative themselves.
And as these races begin to just settle down a little bit and traffic starts to actually become a little bit of a factor, I believe Cody Nikola Lapkowski has found himself at the back of the GT4 field at the moment, begun to work his way through. Oh, he's not quite there yet, excuse me. He's maybe a couple of laps away from that, but he's got a big lead right now. I start to wonder in these kind of situations, though, Cam, where everybody's very close. We've got 7 within 4 seconds almost at the front of the field, or 7 within 4.5. I will start to wonder who's got the fuel on board here and who's starting to think about that already, because we were seeing earlier on and talking earlier on about, is this going to be a one-stop race? Is it going to be 2? Are they going to be able to stretch it to make it a one-stop race? Typically, we haven't seen them able to do that in these special events, but typically also a GT3 car is the top category, or even the only category sometimes. So I wonder what we're going to get from these cars and whether we're only going to see them down pit lane once today.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly going to be a tricky one on the fuel, because you do have to save a good couple of laps each stint, and therefore sitting in the slipstream like this and maybe doing a little bit of lift and coast here and there, things like that, that is what's going to be able to allow you to do the strategy. So sometimes you have to think of the bigger picture here. Maybe that's why Filippo is not too worried, especially Mosen as well, who sat in that 3rd place for a while. Maybe that's why he's not too worried either, because sometimes playing the long game is the important factor, to be honest. And I was just doing a quick little look on the maths, and there's definitely going to have to be, as I said, a good couple of laps. You work out how much that's going to be over the course of a lap, and it's actually not too bad, because we're looking at somewhere in the region of 34 lap stints around here.
Yeah, that's sort of a good estimate, maybe plus or minus 1 or 2, but yeah, it should be around about that sort of threshold sort of for these guys, which is probably going to be maybe, is it going to be unanimous potentially? Maybe that it's sort of overarching advantage for going on that strategy. Maybe we could see people try and stretch it a little bit later, make their final stint a little bit easier, or sort of limit the fact that they're going to have to take the splash and dash a little bit later on. And, well, maybe for the GT4s, they've got a little bit of an easier time of doing that relative to the GTXs. We'll wait and see as to how easy that is for them. Bit of a battle in the background, actually, between the 2 Porsches of Christian Orban and Luca D'Amico. They're sort of ducking and diving all over the place. But in terms of their sort of race so far. You know, they're there, 6th and 7th, but you know, they're not a million miles away from that lead 5, which if they sort of bucked up their ideas and started working together, they could probably actually start to reel in the back of Farkas if they really wanted to. But unfortunately, a couple of mistakes here from Christian Orban, and D'Amico obviously sees that, smells blood, and tries to force the move himself. It's sort of hindering their chances as Filipao loses a place.
He's gone wide at turn 7, and that is all the invitation that Alex Moisen needed to to get through there into second place. Now it's given Zabdir just a second of an advantage. He's going to be reeled in again as he's in a KTM on a straight, and so he will struggle just a little bit. But well, Filippo there will be particularly disappointed with that mistake. I see what you're saying about Orban and D'Amico working together and so on, and cat in the back, but I just don't think that Orban has quite got the pace at the moment. And I wonder whether the Italian has begun to get a little bit frustrated with that and decided to try and carve his own path towards the front. Cody Nikolakowski, though, has been paving the way for everyone else so far. Nearly 20 minutes in here at Dubai Cam, and he's got nearly 10 seconds as he goes into the traffic for the first time.
Yeah, that is a great lead, and that's just pure talent, to be honest. Everyone's obviously on the same car, and they've all had the same amount of time to learn the car, but he's just absolutely showing his ability here, as you say, coming through the traffic now. Let's see the straight line speed advantage, trying to get past the 3 GT4s here, having to zigzag and go around the outside now of that Mercedes in towards the final couple of corners, as they're having a battle themselves a little bit further down. I believe that's a Vertrick there, and Nudge battling out for 10th place in the GT4s as they work their way through the final couple of corners. But yeah, certainly Lakovsky showing his speed on the previous lap. He was, sort of 6 tenths or so faster than the nearest cars, just showing his speed.
It's a marvel, really, of what Cody Latovsky can do. Obviously, he's basically done all the talking. We can't exactly sing his praises much more than he's already sung his own in terms of the opening 20 minutes of the race. You know, a gap like that would be impressive after the course of one stint in the race, let alone in the opening 20 minutes. So, yeah, definitely he's very much impressive, but that goes without saying. Here's Filipao, definitely struggling. I think this is exactly what you predicted, Ewan, in the sense that Lotus was very quick in qualifying, but is struggling a little bit in the race. And, well, Zabdir was sort of the first driver to work his way through. Then Mosen worked his way past with the strength of that McLaren through the corners. And now Stoffmüller is looking to do something a bit similar. Filipao, you know, as quick as he is and as quick as that lap was in qualifying, and obviously his great sort of first opening laps, now we're sort of starting to see how the long-term effect can sort of start to creep in as to, did you make the right choice in terms of your car?
Well, there's going to be a number of discussions and possibly regrets from some about that a little bit later on, and obviously we'll see quite what what that will be by the end of the race. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, we mentioned that you got lots of new graphics here this afternoon. Consistency in a percentage shown on the left-hand side here, and as you can see, showing who's been consistent. I was trying to find a different word to describe that, but I couldn't. So there you are. It's more or less down from the top, as I mentioned with the rating from earlier on. Those who have stayed more consistent are staying more up towards the front. But it is a good graphic, and it's kind of puts all us regulars to shame here, Cam, because I could never do that.
Yeah, it is one thing. Consistency is a slightly subjective thing, because you can be like consistently slow as such still, but for sure in general rule of thumb is if you're more consistent, you are going to be at the front because you're making less mistakes, you're losing less time, and therefore you're going to be towards the front. One issue obviously that a lot of people have is they are fast on one lap, maybe they're fast on a 2 or 3 lap run, but when you start getting 10, 15, 20 laps later, if you can still be pounding in those laps within a couple of tenths of a second of each other, that's what makes you a good driver. If you start making mistakes, you start locking up, you start going wide, you start losing half a second here and there, that is the inconsistencies that always makes a driver struggle. And that's just a good example for Filippo there in that 3rd place in GT4s. He's been more consistent than Mosin ahead, but he's obviously slower overall and just going back. So maybe that does show you that Mosin potentially was being held up a little bit in those early parts of the race. We'll have to work out, but definitely a nice bit of information to add to the stream.
Yeah, obviously we blab on about how important consistency is, and now we've got sort of a visual representation of it, which is nice because you can't really see consistency unless you follow the driver for the entirety of the race. Yeah, so obviously it's a good thing. Obviously, doesn't speak entirely purely on the data, but yeah, it's a very important factor of what we're doing, particularly in sort of these mini endurance races, and in all fairness, all racing in general. You've got to be on the mark, lap in, lap out, minimizing your mistakes, and well, that's that very much does separate the good from the great. The greats will very much be able to hit that limit and run as close as possible to the absolute optimal running for the respective car, for the respective circumstance at that point in time, and others unfortunately will sort of drop off a little bit. And well, at the moment, Mariusz Zabdir and Cody Nikolai-Latowski definitely do seem to be the top two in that regard. They are absolutely flying and, well, trying to take control of this race quite early on, which is pretty much the target for the leader over the course of the first stint, because it just makes their time in terms of their pit stops just that little bit easier.
That certainly does. Yellow flag in the final sector at the moment, I believe, for one of the GT4s. It is. It's one of the Porsches a little bit further down. It's Ludovic Clerc in the 28th position overall now in the Porsche Cayman. And there you can see, having taken to one of the very, very large runoff areas around this circuit, it has to be said. There's a big margin from about turn 11 to turn 13. You can basically cut that entire thing. Obviously, you're going to get penalised for that, but you can do. The tarmac's all there for you, and it does allow you to run off the road if you need it, and certainly did there. Big battle for second place in GT4 going on right now as Mosin gets things wrong into turn 1, I believe, or even a little bit further round. Filippo gets through, and so does Stoffmill, who's getting involved in this one for the first time today. All of this playing into the hands of Zabdir, who is, running away, I would say. Nearly 2 seconds out front, partly because of all the battling going on behind.
Yeah, and they're now getting some of the leading GTXs coming up past them as well. That is Mackenberg and Burke there, and then the other Mackenberg brother a little bit further back, coming through the top of the GT4 category. And that surely isn't going to be helping Filippo try to catch up to Zabdir. Zabdir's looking so comfortable at the front, almost 2 second gap. When you start getting to that 2 seconds, you really just relax that a little bit more, because you don't have the car just in your mirrors the whole time. You don't have the pressure from them behind. You can just sort of do your thing and just continue on with your rhythm. And if Zabdir, a driver we see quite a lot towards the top of these races we do on RaceRoom, he's certainly going to know how to cope with that. But back to the GTXs and Stoffmill now. Sorry, not Stoffmill. Burke getting very close for this third place as we get up to start another lap.
Indeed so. Daniel Burke has been hammering the pressure onto Sven Mackenberg. However, Burke might have the trouble of being the meat in the Mackenberg sandwich if Marvin Mackenberg can close the gap. And, well, he's not going to be doing that sideways through the final corner. And, well, that's definitely looks very cool, but it's not going to help his advance for getting on to the podium, potentially alongside his brother, in towards turn number 1 once more, the downhill braking zone. And Burke is doing a good job as to sort of exactly what Cam was saying, sort of applying that pressure of just staying in the mirrors. You don't necessarily have to do anything in terms of dive bombing, going for a move or anything like that. Sometimes literally just sitting in their mirror, forcing them to look up and check it and see where you are, and do I defend, do I not, making them question and doubt everything they're doing is enough to really throw them off their game. And potentially that's exactly sort of the strategy that Daniel Burke is playing here. And, well, if that is the case, if he can bait Mackenberg into a mistake, force him to defend when he doesn't necessarily need to, potentially through there, if he can get the drive onto the back straight, then it's going to make his job of overtaking just that little bit easier.
Here's a look back from Mackenberg. First chance we've really got to see a GTX battle so far in this one. It's more than 12 seconds behind Cody Nikolai-Latowski at this stage in the race, coming up to half an hour in. Very late on the brakes there from Burke in towards turn 10. He'll run wide, he'll lose a bit of time, and the gap will just grow to about 3/4 of a second. Marvin Mackenberg is beginning to close in on them here, and maybe after his start he's beginning to close in again. But taking Cody Nikolai-Latowski out of this race, I think it's going to be a very interesting race for second place going on here in GTX throughout the course of the race. It's looking pretty close.
It certainly is, especially if you take into consideration the Mackenberg and even Lino just about in the background. They can certainly get involved with this battle if those gaps don't open up too much. So this is great to see. And Burke is obviously feeling it. Dive down the inside of turn 1 and 2, got up into that third place, starting from, I think, 5th. So definitely really enjoying the opening parts of this race and wanting to get up into that second place. You completely cannot see Lakowski up in the distance for them. So this is the only thing that they need to worry about for the time being. And maybe Burke is just trying to put the pressure on, trying to make him, make Mackenberg force a mistake. Maybe just save a little bit of fuel, though. That is always the important factor, because I was just doing the maths to double check, and I think the GT4 is going to be okay to pretty much do a nice a nice one stop without anything too crazy. But we are going to need to see 2 to 3 laps over the course of the race for these GTX cars, and that of course is going to be easier to do now, so you don't have to be saving later on as we come back to this battle in the GT4s.
Yeah, Enzo Filipao is able to actually find himself past Marius Abdi for the race lead, which is something that I definitely didn't see coming at all. Stoffmeal as well with the fastest lap for the Dutchman. Sees him as Marius Abdi sends the move to the right hand. That's brilliant stuff. They continue to go side by side through. The advantage swings the way of the Frenchman of Filipao as they battle, obviously, their way through for the race lead into the next left-hander that leads them on to the back straight. But they've also got the GTX traffic to contend with. Marius Abdi keeps his foot in confidently around the outside, and Filipao got nothing to say to that one. However, the Lotus's straight line speed might work in his advantage, and well, he could very quickly find his way through, but don't count out Stoffmeal there as defensive goes Abdir.
Yeah, it's going to be outside line for Filippo once again. The straight line speed of the Lotus being put to good use, and he's making sure he'll put up more of a fight on this occasion. When he lost the lead, he almost rolled over immediately to let Zabdir to go through. Now it's more of a challenge for Filippo down in towards turn 10. Stockmere will close in. Moten's dropped back a little bit as a result of all of this, but he's going to catch up again, as will Farkas most likely, as a result of all this fighting. It's a great battle going on for the lead of this race. Filippo not leaving Zabdir alone, and it's hard to get away when you're in this KTM with the straight line speed that it has.
Coming up to the braking zone, Filippo's going to dive it down the inside. Maybe not, just backed out to that one in the last minute, just trying to put his car up the inside. Zabdir has gone a little bit wide, though, actually trying to get a bit of a different line. And the top 4, top 5 still close up once again at the top of this GT4 battle. Zabdir had such a lead. I wonder where that went. Must have made a mistake at some point and allowed Filippo to get up behind. And as we've seen with the straight line speed advantage for the Lotus, it seems Zabdir does need to try and pull away in the corners.
He does need to. He needs to use the advantage that he's been given. However, Filippo's straight line speed is so menacing. You can see that Zabdir is all the way to the right line, but in the slipstream and using the power of the Lotus, Filippo pulls up to the left-hand side. No way through turn number 1. It's too fast and too long for him to really make much of an advance. But what he is doing is hindering Zabdir's advantage through the corners, because if he can force him to go defensive, he's putting him offline and he's ruining said advantage that KTM has relative to the Lotus. And well, that's sort of the game that he does need to be playing. But Filippo at the moment is sort of taking this opportunity with both hands, and really in his position you can't blame him, because it's opportunities like this that he really cannot let go.
That certainly is. They battle up towards turn 9. Zabdir once again trying to use these corners to get away. I've got to say, these are my favourite kind of battles, by the way, where you've got a car with a little bit more in the corners but no straight line speed at all, versus one of those that you're fighting through the corner and then having the straight line speed. It's absolutely fascinating to watch. Filippo will gain here as there's a GTX trying to get involved as well. They're all chasing the slipstream here down towards turn 10. The Frenchman breaks later this time. He's braver this time on the outside line. Zabdir will shove him out again. The KTM just has too much through the corners here, and when he's holding the inside line, it's very difficult to do anything in that Lotus that does seem, well, certainly not strong. Down on the brakes, and Stockmill will try and get involved now as well, and wide goes Filippo. It's going to be a KTM 1-2.
And even Mosin's going to be getting involved now in that 4th place. This is a great battle for the front runners of your GT4 category. Coming up towards the next hairpin now. This is a pretty big braking zone, but no one's looking up the inside just yet. They're certainly closing up though. And what a battle this is. Filippo just can't seem to hold it. In some of the more important corners, it's been pushing him back throughout the race. And that there goes another position. Mosin, of course, now all up the back. Great battle, though, between these drivers, just showing you how much they have to fight these cars to keep them at the front.
indeed so. The margin for error is so slim, and the competitiveness is incredible. The GTX has worked their way through, of course, and Philippau's got to recoup, come back, and fight maybe even just that little bit harder. He's got the advantage that he really is ideal. The straight line speed probably should help him in making these moves just a little bit easier, but the KTMs just have that big of an advantage through the twisty stuff, which obviously is helping them. As a couple of swaps in the midfield, Goodwin versus Noj, as they battle for 10th place. Here is our race leader in the GTXs, Cody Nikola Tovsky. It's always good to check in to see how he's doing, because he's running one of those races where I don't really think, unless we did these regular check-ins, we would see much of him, because he's just doing his own thing.
Absolutely, good to see that he's still there, and we're just checking in on him, making sure he's still doing his thing. And he's got more than quarter of a minute now at this stage. You can see by the progress bars around the circuit just to what a gap he's got in terms of actual meters distance. It's quite remarkable. Nearly 16 seconds for the Macedonian right now, who've come through the final corner and go on to a new lap. Sven Mackenberg is just soaking up the pressure from Daniel Burke behind. That's the battle for second. Marvin Mackenberg getting involved as well. Timo Lino rounding out the top 5 in there. Trying to get involved, but he's around about 8 seconds behind those 3 as they go on to a new lap. Lap 18 of this race here. Still 1 hour 50 remaining here at the Dubai Autodrome. And you can be sure we'll be seeing those pit stops in quite some time. Not too much to worry about just for now. It's still very close in GT4 though. The top 5 have gotten away from the rest. Maris Zabdir still leads here as Notch goes off the road at the final sector. He's back on again now. The top 5 remain glued together. Stoffmill a little bit wide down at the hairpin at 2:14, but I'm glad to say that he's showing a bit of the pace that he showed in qualifying, and he struggled to do that so far really in the race.
But we are seeing Zabdir starting to pull away just a car length at a time at the front of this GT4 field show. He does have the speed, just needs to keep that consistency up and try not to make too many mistakes. Down this front straightaway though, is Filippo going to be having a run towards the first corner. It's definitely a big enough braking zone. We saw that diving in maybe towards the inside. Now side by side and just way more speed there. Wonder if Stoffmill saw that one coming, decided not to really defend that one too much, but he does have Mosin up at the back of him now, as Filippo goes back up into that second place. And yeah, great to see that these battles continue, and it's not just Filippo going backwards. He does still have enough to defend, but this battling internally inside the top sort of 4 is allowing Zabdir to get away even further, but we did see that gap crumble just a couple of laps ago.
Potentially that's why we didn't really see much of a defence from Stoffmill, because he knows sort of how hard Filippo is going to fight for these positions. He doesn't want to spend too much time defending second when first place is only a second up the road. We'll see this gap shrink obviously as they put their foot to the floor down the back straight, and Filippo is going to close the gap relative to Zabdir, but is it going to be enough to see him retain in contention? Zabdir, obviously whatever happened earlier on, whether it was a mistake, bit of traffic, whatever happened, he needs to make sure that doesn't happen again, as Moisen is putting a bit of pressure on Stoffmill. But again, that pack dynamic, that racecraft starts to come in, because why move yourself up into third is if you just sort of play the patient game, and if you play your cards right, you could find yourself fighting for first. But if you sort of act too fast in haste and start battling for silly positions and silly squabbles here and there, you could see that chance for first sort of start to dwindle away. So Filippo, Stoffmill and Moisen, while yes, they're all in there in the same class, in the same race, in the same lead fight, they do sort of have to have a bit of a pact at the moment to sort of say, yeah, let's work together, boys. Let's not be too silly, because Zabdir is one of those drivers that if you give him a chance to run away, he's definitely going to take that and not look back.
Oh, absolutely. Mosin right now, I think, is really just holding something back right now, really, and not really getting involved with those 3 anymore. Ever since he dropped out of that battle for the lead here, he's really not gone for it. As goodness me, where has Cody Nikolakowski gone? He's, well, oh dearie me, well, yellow flag been brought out for him, and he's completely fallen off the face of the earth by the looks of things. I've no idea where he's gone, and he's back to pit lane. He may have disconnected from this race. He may have had a technical. He's showing us a DNF now out on the circuit, and I'm afraid our race leader has DNF'd for some reason. He was down at turn 10, I think, just around that kind of area, down at the hairpin, and all of a sudden, a near 20-second lead has dwindled away, and he's out the race.
And that gives the opportunity to Sven Mackenberg and also Daniel Burker to battle it out now for the overall lead in this 2.4 hours of Dubai. The gap has opened up a bit in the last couple of laps. Marvin Mackenberg now is really challenging for that second place, but this has just opened up a different style of race, different opportunity for these drivers. Such a shame though for Latkovsky. We've seen it, I believe we've seen this before in some other races. He just has the speed but doesn't always have the luck and the technical ability on his side, which is a real disappointment for a driver of his caliber.
It seems his own worst enemy was himself, or whatever technical issue that sort of befell him, which was very, very unfortunate, but sort of silver linings to that, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. The good thing is that we've now actually got a lead fight on our hands. Sven Mackenberg and Burker, and also Marvin Mackenberg into the mix as well. The gap has shrunk and grown as they battle their way through traffic, and at different points in the race, obviously different drivers are going to be a bit quicker. Here's Marvin Mackenberg, however. He's creeping his way onto the back of Daniel Burker. That gap sort of about half an hour ago or so was in the reaches of sort of 2.5, 3 seconds, and now he's looming right onto the back of Burker, and well, we could definitely have a good fight, particularly with that rather daunting run through traffic they've got just ahead of them.
Certainly have. This is the first real run through they've got. I know the GT4 field getting quite spread out at this point, but they're on the back of them again. This is the big battle between all the BMWs at the back of the field. It's down from Thomas Allitt, and then we've got Birger Meisman and Roland Bozo there in a row, all fighting between themselves. That's for, 14th place in the GT4 standings at the moment. But this is now a leading fight, separated by just 2 seconds. It's amazing how a race can change with, one moment. We thought, I've got to be honest, I thought Latkovsky was gone and the race was done, but you can never say never.
Yeah, he was gone and he now is gone. In a different way, unfortunately. Bit sad there for Latkovsky, as we were saying though. Such a good job. Had the speed on absolutely everyone, but that is racing, unfortunately. It's just like if you were to get an engine failure or something in real life motorsport, that is just the sim racing equivalent, unfortunately, and he will no longer be participating in this race, and even if he does get back in somehow, will be so far behind that unlikely to win the race anyway from there. But the top three are all within shot, coming down the front straight away. And we do have to, of course, just look out for that Marvin Mackenberg now in that third place. Dropped down on that opening lap and is now looking to try and get back up into that second place, as it seems Burker can't quite hold on to Sven at the front here.
He can't. He doesn't quite have enough. We did see him sort of put some pressure on a little bit earlier on, but potentially out of the slipstream and while losing a bit of motivation, now trying to focus rearwards to the other Mackenberg of Marvin. Potentially that is sort of his thought process, and losing that motivation, losing that drive to stay in contention. However, he can still see his opponent, and again, you know, talking about traffic once more and talking about bad luck in general, to be fair, because it happened to Nikola Latkovsky, and it could definitely still happen to Sven Mackenberg. Fingers crossed, touch wood, it doesn't, but obviously it definitely still can happen, and bad luck goes all over the place, very indiscriminate. So Burker still has got something to fight for, if not first, it's second. And here we go, up to the front, because Marius Sabtir once again under a bit of pressure from Filipao.
Yeah, guess what's happening again here? The GT4 lead battle is back on again. Zabdir briefly lost the lead there as they run down towards turn 14, but it's back in the hand. Well, it was in the hands briefly of Filippo. Sorry, it's back in the hands of Zabdir again. But guess what? We're back on a straight, and the Lotus is going to stretch its legs. To the inside goes Zabdir. Filippo is pushed to the outside again. The grip is just not there for him, though. He'll have to tuck back in. He'll have to wait for the back straight at the earliest for his next chance, you'd imagine.
As Alec there goes off on the BMW we just saw, goes to the back of that battle as Bozo up to 14th as well. But on your screen, this battle for the lead in GT4s, that is certainly something that's pretty crazy. We saw two KTMs get to the front. We saw Zabdir with a couple of second lead, and now all of a sudden the top four are back in. I don't know, because it's off screen, I don't know, is this a mistake that we're seeing? Is this just the fact that Filippo with the extra top speed pulls them all back together? Unsure about that one. We'll see if we can follow it this time around, but certainly these top four are in such a close battle. It is really, really great to see. Let's see Filippo though down this back straight once again. Is this going to be an absolute freight train of a slipstream?
Let's see. Into the slipstream he'll go. The KTM helpless. Zabdir weaving around all over the place to try and break it. He'll get to the inside. Look at how much later Filippo is this time. He's more committed on the outside line. If he can hold it there, he'll have the inside at turn 11, but not quite. He won't do it in time, and so Filippo will stay behind again. Through turn 12 they'll go again here, Cam, and he should have another chance, maybe into turn 14.
Oh, just makes a little mistake there. That leaves Zabdir, lets Zabdir off the hook, but he actually has a bit of a bad exit. Couldn't get the power down, and now look at that Lotus. It's crazy. Actually, just the slight difference there. Just can't keep it in the corners, but on the straights, an absolute monster. Goes to the inside, goes to the outside, actually. Zabdir has to defend hard. He's going to go a little bit wide off the apex there, but just about pulls it back. And once again, the top four close in. What a battle this is in your GT4 category. Stoffmill's still there, and even Mosen in behind.
Absolutely brilliant stuff on display. Stoffmill potentially going for a bit of a look to the inside for second place. Absolutely loving this. It's awesome to sort of see how the differences between the cars and the strengths of each driver are really playing a massive factor. Zabdir got the advantage through the corners, Filippo the advantage down the straights, and it really is developing itself into a very good race. There's Mosen having a look, potentially putting Stoffmill under a bit of pressure in towards turn number 1. The McLaren goes to the outside, swings his way all the way around. Beautiful stuff, committed from the German. Now sees him have the inside for turn number 2, and well, there we go. Mosen gets himself back into contention and back onto the podium. We said he was a little bit quiet, but well, now he's going in all guns blazing, and that was a brilliant move.
He's out KTM'd the KTM there, hasn't he, in towards turn 1. That was great grip from the McLaren. The new GT4 on the scene in RaceRoom, showing its colours beautifully there, up into third place ahead of Stoffmill, who was helpless really. When you're jammed on the inside like that and you've got someone so committed around your outside, there really isn't a lot you can do, and all Stoffmill could do is sit back and applaud really. Moisen up into third place now, and he'll have his sights set on Filippo. He won't be done just yet. We go on board with the new McLaren. It sounds fantastic, by the way, as you can hear probably at the moment. Down in towards turn 10. Zabdir still in front, Filippo not quite as close on this lap.
Yeah, not enough to try and make the move yet, but I definitely think we're going to see that battle come back in once again. Good to see, though, that Mosen is definitely in with this fight as well. He was sitting back just a little bit over the course of the last few laps while the top three were battling, but certainly getting involved now. As once again, we're starting to see just a sort of a 2x2 battle open up ever so slightly, with Filippo going towards, or trying to get himself towards the front of this battle once again. Zabdir, though, breaks in a nice location there, up in towards the final couple of corners, manages to make that apex. It is, you see they go a little bit wide, but it is a sort of double apex hairpin there before the final couple of corners at 15 and 16. Some certainly tricky corners and quite long as well. This is what really hurts the tyres over the course of the stint, but it seems to be that we're staying pretty stable between all these chassis, as we're, of course, very quickly approaching the first hour in this race.
Yeah, it definitely has come up on us quite quickly, but yeah, no sort of major issues for a lot of these cars, which is good to see. Everyone's sort of still relatively stable, so good news for them. And obviously, despite the battling and despite pushing quite hard, they've still kept the tyres in a nice, comfortable window for them. The top three still not really separated by a lot, and Alex Mosen, you can definitely tell by the way he's driving, the way he's just driven back onto the back of Enzo Filippo. He is looking very feisty in this lead fight for the GT4s, and you can just see how the strength of that KTM through the opening sector, really through 1 and then 2 and 3 obviously, which has allowed Filippo to drop back a little bit, potentially into the clutches of Mosen. Stoffmill is still there, let's not forget. Also, Farkas is going to be a bit of an interesting one. He's sort of sat there as a dark horse. He's not quite been able to close the gap really to get back into contention to make this a 5-horse fight, but you have to say, if anything really major sort of kicks off between these four, he's going to be right on the scene and potentially sort of an extra spanner into the works. As here's a fight, actually, Bozo versus Mazeman for 14th, a little bit further down.
There's contact. Bozo spun and nearly a big moment for Alice there as well. Oh, goodness me. Mazeman now and Bozo will go side by side, and we're nearly 3 wide. Oh no, it's the trick of the camera, excuse me. We're 2 wide indeed, with Bozo on the inside line here, and a KTM GTX not too far behind either. The Belgian will, the Hungarian will hold the inside line. That's be the Belgian on the outside, and they'll sort themselves out there. That was Well, 2/3 of the cars in that battle there, Cam, were all over the place out the final corner there.
That just shows you how hard these cars are pushing, even though we're, of course, it's coming towards the middle point of this race. They're still pushing hard, and that was Alec, I think, in the background, trying to keep up, trying to get involved, but just pushing a little bit too hard in a couple of corners there, in that slightly darker of the two blue BMWs. Well, we do have Espinholz just in behind, and McLaren's, as they're sliding once again, coming through turns 8 and 9 onto this back straightaway. Just showing you they are really pushing these cars. And it doesn't matter if they're for lower positions, they're still trying to fight for them.
Race is a race at the end of the day. Let's be honest. I mean, obviously, it would be nice if these guys were fighting for first, but, well, they're fighting for their respective positions. And for these guys, obviously, they've found someone they're relatively close with on pace and can have that fight with. So as long as they're having fun, it's definitely fun for us to sort of watch as to how much they're fighting for these places. And, well, between the four of them, they are definitely putting on a pretty good show as well, which is, again, no complaints from us, because at the end of the day, as I say, race is a race, and this battle is, nothing short of quite a spectacle going on at the moment. And again, unfortunately, it is only for 14th place, but in a field as this, to just be here is an achievement in itself. But to be fighting at the front like these four and still putting on a good show is just that little bit better.
Yeah, this is one of the better battles we've seen in a RaceRoom ranked event for quite some time here. In the Dubai 2.4 hour, we're just coming up to 50 minutes into this one, so we're over the third distance. We're on board with Stoffmill right now, in behind Alex Moulton. And as you can see, the KTM with its main problem, the lack of straight line speed here is obvious. Down in towards turn 10, there's just no way you can make a move down here with that kind of speed. But as Mario Sabdir has shown, it is possible to get to the lead and defend from the front here. We've technically got 5 for the lead as well, with Vince Farkas not too far behind in the heavily weighed down Mercedes here. Maybe hence why it's one of only 2 in the field here today. Out of turn 12 they'll go, and Stoffmill once again, despite a full face of slipstream, will go absolutely nowhere here on this straight.
That's crazy on board. Just seeing how the meters get pulled out, but as soon as you get back into the corners, they just come back the way. It's definitely a bit of a yo-yo battle. And of course, the Lotus is even more extreme in that case, as we've seen Stoffmill once again going all over the inside curbs there. It's definitely a very compliant car. And nimble, as you were mentioning earlier, just that KTM's ability as the GTX there comes up the inside. And that, I believe, actually is Mackenberg, the leader potentially. Yes, it is, with Burke just in behind, and the other Mackenberg, Marvin, there. So top 3 in that category, all very close together, and the top 5 in the GT4s also close together, as we're getting the 2 leaders side by side in towards turn 1.
A very picturesque moment, obviously, to see that as Mackenberg laps the Zabdir. But yeah, it's nice to see that overlap between the 2 leaders, and yeah, good stuff from both of them. Obviously, Zabdir has not had an easy run, neither has Mackenberg. He had to obviously halt the advance from Daniel Burke a little bit earlier on. Got a little bit fortunate in terms of the Topsky car falling through the face of the earth in of itself. But again, you've got to be in that position to benefit from the luck that falls your way. He could have very easily sort of been in Burke's position and be sat in second as opposed to the leaders. That's one way to find your way through Burke. I don't necessarily know if that's the easiest way through, but that's definitely one way to sort of thread the needle through the middle. And, well, he's worked his way through. No harm, no foul, but, well, that could have definitely ended just that little bit worse.
The McLaren there, by the way, involved is Sebastiano Rossi, who's down in 19th place in the GT4s at the moment, but has only just fallen off the lead lap for now, so it's still remaining very close up and down the field here in GT4. This little bit of traffic, though, has helped Mario Sabdir no end. Enzo Filippo has been balked by it a little bit, and it's slightly spread things out in GTX as well, but it's closed things for third here. Mosin here with a lot of defending to do, with Stoffmill right behind. They'll go into turn 12. The KTM will no doubt get an exit, and it's certainly faster on the apex speed. But once again, there's just no chance when you've got the straight line speed that this car does. Let's see as they go down towards 14, though, whether there's going to be something on the brakes here, because that's where you've got to do it. McLaren is one of the heavier ones in terms of ballast put onto it as a result of the BOP. But no chance in towards turn 14. Stoffmill is going to have to get inventive, really, and that's where your problem really comes in one of these more high downforce cars. You're loving it through the corners, but you're going nowhere in the race, really.
Yeah, the only good thing for Stoffmill here really is the back of that McLaren is actually quite a nice looking car to be sitting behind of all of them. And now coming down onto the front straightaways, we've had Espinhold there having a spin in sector 3, going down a position to Clerc, and maybe even to Rossi, getting back on. And continuing, he was battling for that 16th place a bit earlier, but unfortunately just having a bit of an issue there in sector 3. But back to this battle for what is now P3, and yeah, once again Softmill gets close, but just needs to find a way past. But of course, at this point of the race, you're really just trying to keep the leader in your sight, as Zabdi is getting a bit of a gap once again at the front, but it seems like every sort of 5 laps or so, that seems to close in once again. So that's just really is the goal, is get to the pit stop within a second or so of the leader, and then you've got a really good opportunity in the second part of the race.
I'm sure it could be a completely different narrative by the time we get sort of past the pit lane sequence, because these guys would have saved different amounts of fuel and might have shorter/longer pit stops, maybe some differences in terms of their tyre strategy as well, prolonging their pit stops relative to others. Maybe we could see sort of Marius Abdi maybe coming out towards the back end of the field. Maybe we could see Stoffmill take towards the front. Who knows? And that is going to be a bridge that we cross when we come to it. But for sure, this first stint has been entirely just setting yourself up as best as possible, so much so that when you get to the halfway point / the pit stop sequence, you are in you're as far up as possible, you're as close to the lead as possible, so much so that you can really make the most of your pit strategy. And I think that's really sort of the ideal that Daniel Berker is going for as well. He's not really quite able to keep Mackenberg in of his sights. He's pushing quite hard in order to sort of maintain it around a second and a half, 2 seconds, that sort of vein. And maybe we could see a nice strategy from Becker to see him close the gap, or maybe even find himself in front. Either way, the race is far from done, particularly when the margins are this small.
How cool is this, by the way, to run on board with the KTM GTX? It looks like a spaceship in here, to be honest. I think, by the way, that I don't know if this is quite the car or whether it's the GT4, but certainly one of the KTMs has that opening where the door, it's not really a door, it kind of opens outwards, almost like something out of some kind of fantasy film, where it kind of not the whole cockpit, but like the front of the top bit of what we're seeing right now kind of all folds out into one, and the driver just stands up almost as if you've been sort of in a sandpit, and you get yourself out. That was very all over the place from Berker. We were enjoying it. Berker maybe not enjoying turn 7 there, which is a really nasty corner, I've got to say, as a driver. You're burning your front left to shreds. And also you're struggling with a combination of understeer and oversteer by the looks of things in the GTX.
Yes, definitely, at least with the default setup that I was driving today, it is a bit of a tricky car. I'm sure there are a few clicks that will help the balance of that, but yeah, it's generally a little bit understeery on the front, but then you try and push it a little bit and then the rear comes round on you, so you've got to keep the car pretty balanced. You've got to have some good feel on the pedals and on the steering inputs to keep the car balanced. And of course, they are some of the top drivers on RaceRoom, so they definitely know what they're doing from that perspective. But yeah, certainly not the easiest car to drive in that respect. As we come back to the battles in the GT4s, and once again, I think that gap to Zabdi is just closed up ever so slightly a little bit, with Filippo trying to catch up. But of course, Mosen and Stoffmill are sat in behind. As you can see on the tower, actually, Stoffmill still has the purple lap, the fastest lap in the category. So definitely showing that there is speed there, but down in fourth at the moment.
Yeah, it just goes to show how crazy this race has been and how close all 4 of them are. If Stoffmill is able to set the benchmark in terms of the fastest lap, obviously Philip has had it, Zabdi has had it, probably at some point Mosen has had it as well. They've sort of been chopping and changing it, but definitely all of them have the pace and potential to do well. We can see that because the driver towards the back end of this lead fight has the fastest lap of all of them. And it's just been a case of trying to capitalize on that potential and exploit that potential to the best of your ability and make the most of the situations that have come your way. Maybe making the most of when the 2 drivers in front of you go side by side and work your way past. Either way, any one of these 4 realistically still have a pretty good shout of winning. There's a bit of a breakaway now to Farkash, who is about 3, nearly 4 seconds off the back of Mike Stoffmill. So maybe this is a bit of a breakaway for the top 4, but between these guys, it's just been remarkably close. And in all fairness, as we said, this is probably one of the better fights that we've seen for quite some time, and it's definitely not looking like it's going to be over anytime soon, which for sure is, I don't really think we could ask for much more. If we were, we'd be sort of asking a little bit too much of these cars, because these are the top flight and, well, the best of the best really are giving us a fantastic show.
Absolutely, as I said earlier, this is I've enjoyed this a lot, actually. The opening hour of this one has been absolutely fascinating at the front of GT4 especially, and the GTX battle is nice now as well, to have 3 drivers within 3 seconds. Obviously, we mourn the loss of Nikola Latkowski from this race, because he was putting on a fantastic show at the front of this one as well, and surely going to a victory. But unfortunately, things have not gone his way today, and he's DNF'd from this one, so that is a shame to see. Still, all 19 GT4s that took to the start today are in this one. 3 of the GTXs are out. Nikola Latkowski, as I mentioned earlier on. Kulas never recovered from his opening lap incident. We saw him coming back through the GT4s, but he pitted and never returned. And Podium actually never got into the race for some reason. So he qualified there, but never got into the race. Don't know what that was all about. But that makes up the 3 GTX retirements that we have. It now does mean, Cam, that, and there you can see them on the left-hand side, the bottom left. It does mean, Cam, that the GTXs have got actually, they're vastly outnumbered now. Not that it really matters too much, but I guess at this stage in the race, because they're so spread out, it will just feel a bit of a constant, really, and that can be a bit annoying.
Yeah, they almost feel like they're just driving against the GT4s, just racing against the GT4s.
Oh,
There's always we've seen Pippa go off there, and that is losing a place to Ika as well. So definitely a mistake made, a crucial mistake made by Pippa there, because he also did a lap or so ago, and I believe that is the cars we see in the background, if I'm not mistaken. Butler just in behind too. So definitely an important moment of the race for them. So definitely a battle for the top 5, and the GTX is still going on.
Great to see, obviously, and potentially, as we say, we saw Pippa cause a yellow flag not too long ago, and well, maybe that's that knock-on effect as Marvin Mackenberg is all over the back end of Daniel Berger as they work their way through yet another wave of traffic. Still not entirely complete, of course, but still positive signs for Marvin Mackenberg in order to work his way through. Potentially Sven Mackenberg as well is on the horizon, only second half. Let's not forget, this isn't exclusively a fight for second. Or Sven Mackenberg, I should say, hasn't completely ran off with things. And again, it all depends really on who gets the better run through traffic. Like right there, Berger was able to gain half a second purely because of the traffic that sort of befell his way. And once again, Sven Mackenberg getting the worst end of it as he has to sort of go offline to work his way through. Potentially this traffic cycle could mean good news for Berger and Mackenberg in behind.
It's certainly closed up the ebb and flow of traffic, just allowing us to enjoy a bit of a GTX lead battle right now as we're about to hit the hour mark in this race here. So what we're saying, Cam, 6 more laps and they've made it to half distance, and then they'll be all right on fuel.
That's what we believe, but that is a lap or 2 extra than what running at just normal pace would be. So for all drivers, they will have needed to save a tiny bit of fuel per lap. And the good thing with it being such long stints, about 34-35 laps, is say you needed to save, let's say, 10 litres to do those extra laps. If you divide that 10 litres over the 34 laps individually, it's not actually too much to save. It's certainly something that you can work out to do, but of course you need to plan these things. Otherwise you will have to do a splash at the end for just a couple of laps of fuel, which is obviously effectively a drive-through penalty that you're giving yourself compared to everyone else. So sometimes, yeah, just a bit of lift and coast, a bit of traffic management here and there with your throttle inputs can always be very important with that. But certainly, you've got to keep pushing though, and that is what these top 3 drivers are in your GTXs, and also the battles a little bit further back, like we're looking at the moment with Econs.
Absolutely, it's very, very close as Pippa was able to work his way back through, but Ika is not really going to shy away from an opportunity to get back inside the top 5. It just sounds a bit nicer to say, oh yeah, no, I finished inside the top 5 the 2.4 hours of Dubai, and he's only 1 place behind that. Obviously, being this close sort of to that pit stop window, is it worth necessarily really forcing the initiative when you could just sit behind, do some lifting coast, and then maybe get the work done in terms of the pit lane? But back to this fight, because the top 3 of our GTX are separated by less than 2 seconds now once again, and it is heating up to be quite an interesting fight. And again, it's the smallest of margins. We're right towards the top end of capabilities in terms of RaceRoom esports. These familiar faces that we see time and time again, always competing and always competitive towards the front end of their respective races and their respective fields. And right now. It's a very, as I say, fine line, and if you sort of miss your mark, misstep just that little bit, it could have catastrophic consequences. And we've sort of having to duck all the way to the top end of the GTR4s, and then obviously all the way back to the top end of the GTXs, because both battles for the lead have been very, very enthralling pretty much for the entire last hour of this race. And fortunately, we've still got over half of it left to go.
We do, and it will be enjoyed, hopefully. This is Mosin versus Stoffmill here, and maybe the McLaren drivers had a bit of a bad run through traffic here, or maybe there has been something else at play, but elsewhere, Rui Felipe has become a DNF from this one, the first GT4 to DNF from this race by the looks of things. He was running inside the top 10 in that Porsche Cayman. Not sure what happened to him, but I'm afraid that is the end of his day, rather abruptly for him there. Stoffmill very close to the back of Mosin now, who does seem to be struggling towards the end of this stint. I know the KTMs are obviously good through the corners or whatever, but Mosin here has lost a lot of time versus Filippo, for example, and Zabdir as well. I don't know whether he's just worried about fuel late on here either, but he's not very worried about getting overtaken here, because Stoffmill all of a sudden after one straight is a couple of car lengths away.
Yeah, certainly getting closer and closer. It's hard to find those gaps though, when of course you lose a bit on the straights. You have to make up for it, and in sometimes over sort of push to try and do that. But as you see, they use all the curbs through this section of the track, but then you've got to press hard on the brakes there, get it slowed down, try and sneak up the inside maybe like we saw Zabdir do, but no, actually goes out wide, tries to get the run out of 7 up towards 8 and 9. And of course, this is the important one. Then what you could do here is you could dive it down the inside, try and slow down the McLaren of Mosin ahead to slow him down onto the back straight, but it looks like he's just going to sit behind and try and use the slipstream to pull him along, as they actually need to do so, because Filippo and Zabdir are starting to get away just in front of these guys.
They have indeed, and Maris Zabdir more so able to pull out the gap to Filippo that Filippo has been able to bring out to Mosin. So Zabdir's put in an absolute worldie of the last couple of laps. There you can just see the KTM leading the way, and you can visibly see the difference as this top 4 fight really has broken away. A bit of a slide there from the Dutchman of Stoffmill and his pursuit to work his way back on to the podium. And while the McLaren and KTM particularly of Mosin and Stoffmill individually have been very, very close and swapping places and trading who's quicker at different points, but also just in terms of their strengths versus their weaknesses, the KTM and the McLaren very much do have that similarity of very quick through the corners and then sort of languishing just a little bit in terms of straight line speed, and that's definitely crafted itself into quite a decent display of racing action right now. But you can definitely tell that Stoffmill is sort of getting his elbows out just a little bit, put the boxing gloves on, and well, now he's trying to find a way through on Mosin, because he is practically pushing him through the majority of the circuit.
It really is. This is the kind of thing, as we mentioned many times, that you get with the KTM, but even so, this is quite a lot more than we usually see. Zabdir, by the way, has pulled out quite a margin now. It's nearly 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds to Filippo out front right now. This is back at the front of the GTX category, as we've got 7 minutes to go, to the halfway mark in this one. Still wanting another maybe 3, maybe 4 laps from these guys to be able to make it to the halfway and make it on fuel. It's Daniel Burke with Marvin Mackenberg just behind. Burke will be just looking over his shoulder at the moment, you'd imagine. Down in towards turn 14, they will go. Mackenberg nowhere near close enough for a move, as has been the case for pretty much the entirety of this race so far here today. They'll make their way through the final corner. They'll get onto another lap, and Sven Mackenberg won't have the best of luck through traffic there. The gap will dip below a second, will it? Not quite, as the McLaren is negotiated out front. It's going to be very tense between these three, I get the feeling at this stage, because they seem very, very evenly matched.
Yeah, they're so similar on pace. Even on the previous lap, just a couple of tenths separating all three of them on their lap speed, which is a good indication that they're obviously showing some good speed in there. To be honest, they're not actually that much slower than what they were doing about an hour ago at the beginning of the race. So they've certainly had some pretty consistent pace over the course of the race so far. And here's the actual consistency levels, percentages that we're seeing. And actually at the top there, it looks like, at least in the GT4s, that it is just about Zabdir at the front with the highest, although Farkash in behind actually not far crash, to Nico in behind, just a little bit higher, but of course very close between all of these guys. And this number's actually gone up since we previously saw it, because obviously the first lap is slower, and as the race goes on, that lap is less and less important in terms of the percentage overall. But yeah, no one is going to be getting up towards 100%, of course.
It's quite unrealistic to
Don't make me laugh.
yeah. If they do, fair play to them. Probably not, though. Here we go. Here's an interesting fight. Daniel Bacher versus Marvin Mackenberg for second place in the GTX. Is very wide, though. Goes the Austrian, potentially bringing Mackenberg back into contention. To the outside, able to hang on, though, is Bacher. And, well, he's able to hang on to second place for now. What this is good news for Sven Mackenberg, as he's able to branch out once again this gap to over 2.5 seconds clear of second place. But Mackenberg definitely looking eager now to start putting some pressure on, and you could see that in Bacher. A slight mistake, and well, it was very closely quite a costly one.
It was. And this is music to Sven Mackenberg's ears, though, as you mentioned, because as soon as these two start to fight, the more time that they lose, and the bigger the lead gets for Mackenberg in front. And whether there's a bit of games here between the brothers here, and whether there'll be one helping out the other. Marvin Mackenberg just applying that pressure to Bacher right now, but I somewhat doubt it at this stage. Either way, looking down the inside again, does Mackenberg won't be able to get alongside enough in towards turn one, and they'll continue to run nose to tail right now. They've still got a significant amount of the GT4 field not far in front of them right now, by the way. Luka Vukaric is just in front, along with Andy Goodwin. The next two, I believe, Christian Orban is not too far away, and they're starting to get up towards those at the front of the GT4 order. But we're also starting to get pit stops. Egan and also Piatkowski already in the pit lane, just about 4 minutes short of the halfway mark.
And that is 34 laps done, which means 0 fuel saving for those drivers. And therefore, even by the time they come out of the pit lane, they are going to be, a bit short again. So they're going to have to splash and dash for probably 2 to 3 laps of fuel at the end. So we'll see how much time it actually works out for them losing. But I assume that's going to be somewhere in the region of 30 odd seconds when we get towards the end of the race that they're going to have to lose. So, and obviously the cars ahead of them are all going to be going longer, so therefore it wasn't probably that much time that they lost. As we're seeing, is that Filippo coming into the pit lane as well? That is also potentially a lap short. Oh, that could be interesting as well. Is he going to have to splash at the end?
This is already interesting, because we were talking about how the GT4s are practically perfect in terms of their pit strategy. If they run quite well, they might actually be able to get it bang on, but Philippa going a lap early might have some consequences. Maybe that could be the Lotus having more in terms of straight line speed, might be asking more of the engine, might be burning just that little bit more fuel, or just the fact that Philippa was trying to desperately hang on to that lead fight a little bit earlier on in the race, which maybe could see him stay in contention. But maybe he's just burning a bit too much fuel in that case, and might see himself having a bit of a problem later on. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe he's going to be able to compensate for it later on. But yeah, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to be in the future for us? And we were talking about how important strategy was going to be, but already in the early stages, towards the latter end of it, Philip Howe's really just thrown a curveball.
Well, it's certainly a bit of a minefield for us, and it's going to be a real wonder to see quite where it's going to end up. It's one of those races that you just have to keep watching right till the end, because otherwise you can't really guess the winner from this far out. 5 seconds is the lead for Maris Abdir right now, by the way, as this battle continues to lose time. Mosin keeping Stockmill behind purely because the KTM once again cannot really overtake. Out of turn 12 they will go, and it's going to be the McLaren in front, you would imagine. They approach the halfway mark. We're just over a minute away from that at the moment. 2.4 hours translates to 2 hours 24, and so an hour 12 will be the halfway mark. We're very nearly there. Into the final couple of corners now for these two, and it's a bit of a narrower line through the penultimate corner for Mosin. A better one from Stockmill, who goes into the pit lane in the KTM. He takes a rather aggressive line on the way in. I think if it was real life, you might get pulled up on that. But either way, Stockmill is in, and maybe it's tactical. Maybe he has run out of fuel.
I reckon this might be okay, because by the time, obviously, you spent a minute in the pit lane and you come out, he's going to be after the 1 minute 12, so he should just about be okay potentially. We will find out, but definitely these drivers going that extra lap onto the sort of 35th lap or so, that is going to be well, quotation marks, easy for them in this second half of the race, because you also have to factor in whether you effectively have to do an extra lap depending on, because this is the slower class, their race finish is depending on when the overall leader finishes. So it's not when they cross the line, it's when the overall leader crosses the line. And therefore, if the leader's just coming up behind them, they're going to be going into turn 1 as the leader finishes the race. So they effectively have an extra lap. And therefore, you have to just take that into consideration when you're doing these calculations as well. And as you see on the tower, the green symbol will come up when they've completed the mandatory pit stop. And you can clearly see who has pitted already. So we're getting a lot of other drivers, Stoffmil, Orban, Vertrick and Noj in the pit lane as we speak.
Yeah, more people pulling their way into the pit lane, which is obviously saying this is probably the ideal strategy for a lot of people, maybe exactly on this mark. But yeah, the strategic dynamic is already proven to be very, very important, as this is Andy Goodwin working his way through. We've not really seen much of him, unfortunately. He had a bit of a fight with Noj, I think, earlier on in this race, and now he's been able to go a little bit longer than the likes of Philip Allen and Stoffmil, etc., and stretch that advantage, which is, I guess, not harming him at all and only doing him favours. The longer he can stretch this first, the less time he has to spend in the pit lane refueling for the second.
Well, this is going to be quite something to work out, I would imagine. We are over the halfway mark now, though. The Mackenberg brothers have both made it. Burker didn't quite, but we know that the GTXs are a little bit more marginal on fuel, so Burker might even have to scale it back even more in the second half of this race. And maybe that's why Marvin Mackenberg was not really threatening throughout most of the race so far. We are seeing sort of random drivers as well, able to go a lot further than others at this stage. Of those leaders, we've now got Mosin in, but we've already had Filippo and Stoffmil into the pit lane. And by the way, the green circle with the 1 in the middle is displaying to us that they have taken the 2 tyres, they have cleared the mandatory pit stop, and so that's all okay for them. Stoffmil now nearly 7 seconds behind Filippo. That has cost them so much time, and Mosin was really struggling towards the end of that stint.
Yeah, I think the tyres are starting to give up there. They'll definitely be enjoying the fresh rubber that they've got on the cars now, as we're seeing Mosin Farkash come in as well. As yeah, interesting to see some of these drivers go a little bit further than we're expecting. The 2 Mackenberg brothers in after 38 laps, so they've gone about 3 laps longer. So they're definitely going to have it nice and easy to the end. They won't have to save as much, of course, and they've done a good job to save that compared to a completely flat out race than we saw a little bit earlier on from some of the drivers coming in a bit early. But yeah, certainly pit stop time for these drivers out on track.
Yeah, we've reached that stage in the race, the one that we've been eagerly anticipating. We've enjoyed the opening race sort of skirmishes and fights and things like that, but this is really where things start to get a little bit interesting, as we've already touched on the variation and the knock-on effects that this could potentially have. Very interesting as well. We're still waiting for Zabdir, D'Amico and Goodwin to come in as Enzo Filipao gets himself back ahead of the likes of Mosin and Farkash by quite some margin, it must be said as well. Will Stoffmil also do the same ahead of the Mercedes and now ahead of the McLaren as well. So there we go. There's the fluctuation in terms of those 3 in their respective battles. Still just waiting for Zabdir though, and well, he's going quite long, which is, I guess, accustomed to the fact that he was leading the race. He could almost control the pace and just save that little bit more fuel than those random potentially. But then again, he was taking the full brunt of air. He didn't often have a lot of slipstream to lift and coast with. Who knows? But there he is, finally into the pit lane, and it's a race against time for those in behind.
Maybe this will allow him to put 1 or 2 less litres in and shorten his pit stop here, but I don't think he will do that. He'll just fill up to the top again, and he'll be able to go full out for the second half of this race, I would imagine. The gaps have very much opened up at this stage. Luca D'Amico is to come in as well. Andy Goodwin will likely do the same as well in the last of the KTMs when he gets round to it. Round at the final corner. In terms of the GTX cars, it's all got very close again. Everybody stayed where they were. Sven Mackenberg still leads Daniel Burker and then Marvin Mackenberg, but they're all of a sudden separated by about a second between the whole of them. Oh, Burker very nearly goes into the back of Mackenberg. He completely missed his braking zone there, and he's down to 3rd.
After all those laps, sitting in that second place, holding on. Just one little mistake there, going too deep. We did see that quite a while ago, actually. Him pushing just a little bit too hard into that corner, and now drops down into third place. The two Mackenberg brothers up towards the front together, as we've seen so many times over the years, and they're going to be enjoying that one. Getting for a little bit of traffic, actually. I believe that might be Noja or Farkash there that they're trying to get past now as they work their way up. We got a yellow flag. Ecot is off. Sixth place in your GTX category, but certainly for Burke now losing time behind the Mercedes. This is just going from bad to worse on this sort of second half of his outlap, really.
It really is. It was probably one of the more vital laps of the race. He was given this opportunity after the pit stops to really start putting some pressure onto Sven Mackenberg, but unfortunately that was all thrown away, and it really didn't take much at all as D'Amico is into the pit lane mows and works his way past. But yeah, for Burke, that is a big shame. He's now got a mountainous task ahead of him for the final hour and 6 minutes of the Dubai 2.4 hours, because he had to reclose that gap, and more importantly, just to get himself back into the mental frame of things to actually be able to close that gap, and then obviously to tackle what is going to be a very titanic defense from both Mackenbergs. And well, it's going to be a great result for them. It's not often we really see one Mackenberg without the other, and well, now they're going arm in arm for 1 and 2, at least for now. There's still an hour left to go, so let's see that, but at least positive signs now for the two Germans.
It definitely is. Here's Stoffmill. He's got one of the other KTMs behind. It's one of the GTXs. I think that is Berker, actually. Makes his way out of the... it is indeed. Out of turn 9, down onto the back straight. And there's a bit further down the highest of the BMWs out in the order so far, and has been for quite some time. Radoslav Pievkowski. He's got just over 2 seconds. He's got quite some seconds, actually, over Berger Meersman, who's in the second placed BMW. Christoph Norge is currently in the pit lane and drops down to 12th place. And we're still waiting for Andy Goodwin to come in as well. I'm starting to wonder whether it's not only Zabdir who was able to push this one long, but also the fact that the KTM in GT4 is just able to sip its fuel quite well. And 7 minutes past the hour, Andy Goodwin is able to come into the pit lane.
I mean, it kind of makes sense in some ways. It's slower on the straights, so maybe it's therefore burning less fuel. Yeah. And therefore doesn't use as much. I don't know. I do have an engineering degree, but I can't think of that off the top of my head. But maybe there's some science behind that one, and certainly Goodwin enjoying that one. 37 laps. That's definitely a good couple of laps longer than we were expecting, which is good to see. Is it going to work out? We'll have to find out a little bit later on. But that means that Zabdir will come back to the front and leading the way in the GT4 class, and actually has a really, really nice gap now to Stoffel. A good few seconds there, and that is getting to a point where he can be very comfortable, but we have seen Zabdir lose some big gaps towards the front already.
Yeah, it's been thrown away quite easily from Eric Zabdir. The two Mackenbergs are actually very, very close. Sven Mackenberg only 2.5 tenths clear of his brother Marvin Mackenberg. They're not separated by too much. How hard they're going to fight, though, is a different story. This is Christian Orban. Is he going to be able to work his way past Andy Goodwin? And we probably should be quite an easy affair, you would imagine, but relative to Ian Egan potentially just in behind, it's all just a case of how quickly Goodwin can get back out of the pit lane. He was fighting towards the lower reaches of potentially a top 10, so that might be his aspiration. Vutric is next in that regard, then obviously Piatowski, but well, how quickly can Goodwin get back out and get back into the onto circuit and back up to speed is the question. 3 seconds and closing very, very quickly, so Goodwin might see himself behind Vutric, and there we go, just ticks back through, so he's completed a stop. Now it's a case of getting to the pit limit line, and well, I guess he's right on target there, down in P10, rejoins the circuit, completely disregards the use of the white line, but we won't talk about that. And then through turn number 1, and well, he's got quite a nice gap to Piatowski in behind, so at least the top 10 for now is secure, and well, the only way is up.
Yeah, top 10 relatively secure, 11 seconds between those two. Let's have a little bit of a rundown then as we've completed this pit stop phase as to quite where we are. We've got Sven Mackenberg leading the race overall with his brother and fellow Mackenberg right behind. There is the fight for the win right now with just over an hour remaining here at Dubai. Out onto the front straight to complete 40 laps in this one. Mackenberg leading Mackenberg. Daniel Perker is just in the third place behind them. Timo Lino about 30 seconds back and we've also got Timo Pipper inside the top 5 in the GTX category as well. It's no longer quite as close in the GT4s, I can tell you. Marius Sabtier has 5.5 seconds over Mike Stoffmill. It's a KTM 1-2. With Alex Mosin in the 3rd place. Spencer Farkas is in the 4th position ahead of Luca D'Amico in the 5th place. Enzo Filippo now 2.5 seconds behind D'Amico at this stage. That is a bit of a surprise to see. The Frenchman dropping down to 6th place, but I noticed, Cam, that he's got the number 2 next in his green circle. I wonder whether he's been down twice.
Yeah, that famous letter 2 of the alphabet. I wonder if that's something to do with speeding in the pit lane, potentially. I didn't see like a message come up, but I do wonder if that was what's hindered. Notch has also come in twice, as well as Rossi, but Rossi I noticed did quite a while ago. But yeah, I do wonder if that's just a pit lane speeding infringement for Filippo, and that's really taken him out of contention. He, of course, got pole position, led for so long, had a great battle with the likes of Zabdir, Stoffmill and Mosin up towards the front, but unfortunately that seems to be some sort of mistake. Pushed him down to what is currently 6th position, and that's going to be very difficult to come back from.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not the longest. Actually, no, I said that it is quite a long pit lane in all fairness. So it probably is going to. I was going to say it's not the longest in the world, but then I looked at the track map again. I was like, yeah, no, it's not looking great. But I mean, to be fair, he's done the work in the first stint. At least he's there still in 6th place, which isn't a bad position per se. It's not like he's now a few laps down and right towards the back end of the very extensive GT4 field, but in the eyes of Filippo, it's not where he would have wanted to be. So yeah, it's not great, let's put it that way, and he would have very much preferred to be still fighting with Zabdir, Stoffmill and Mosin for the victory, but now unfortunately he finds himself in a little bit of a no man's land. I mean, he's got 2.5 seconds up to Luca D'Amico if he wants to get his way back into the top 5, but backwards to Christian Orban is around about 20 seconds or so. So the fight for sure is for Filippo to work his way back up to D'Amico. If he's very, very quick in the final hour and a half, potentially, maybe we could see him get onto the back of Farkas, but that second stop is very, very costly and, well, again, suboptimal. I know Lewis isn't here, but it's exactly what he would say in the sense that it's not great for us. TLDR, he's not going to win.
Well, yeah. I'm having second thoughts about this a little bit, Cam, because I've just calculated that he's about 17 seconds off the lead right now. He came out not in 2nd place. He came out behind. Stoffmill, was he behind it or Mosin as well? I'm not entirely sure. But either way, even if he was leading or he was right behind Sabdir when he came in to make his drive through, I don't think 17 seconds covers a drive through around here. So I don't know quite what the issue has been. But so if there was a drive through, then purely simply, I don't think it was one. Because 17 seconds, in my opinion, is not enough time to have lost for the Lotus. I'm not entirely sure, honestly, because judging by these numbers, I don't think there's enough time lost here for him to have made 2 stops, but clearly he has. That's what the numbers are telling us right now, and he's down in 6th. I mean, it's possible that he can still get on the podium for him. I don't think he's going to drop any further than 6th place, but given the fact that everyone was so close on pace during the last stint, and for example on that last lap everybody inside the top 6 was covered by less than half a second, it's hard to see these big gaps closing too much in the course of less than an hour.
Yeah, maybe you're right, actually. I didn't realize it was only 17 seconds, so in that case maybe it is just a graphical glitch, but then he must have made a mistake somewhere to lose that extra time as well. So certainly not the ideal situation for him, and getting back from that, is it just a couple of seconds away from the car's head, as you were mentioning, so definitely some places to be up for grabs, but he's not going to be coming back and challenging for that podium at all, which is a little bit of a shame, as of course we're now into the final hour of the race, and it gets to a point where the positions are somewhat settled as the gaps start to open up. You can, of course, bridge a couple of seconds gap, but when it starts getting up to 3, 4, 5 seconds, it becomes very difficult indeed. But one gap that's still remaining close is this battle for second place in said category, as Stoffmill holds on to that second place. He did drop down to 4th at one stage. Mosin has been ahead of Stoffmill as well at one stage. They flipped around, but in the end, Stoffmill second place and Mosin in 3rd.
Brilliant fighting between the pair of them, and as you can see, not separated by much at all. Trying to negotiate some traffic of their own contingent in the form of one of the BMWs, potentially Alec or Bozo. But yeah, that's definitely going to slow down Mosin. Actually, quite a little bit got caught up behind him going into turn number 9, I believe, which is music to the ears of Stoffmill. Rejoining obviously back to back for the pair of them, and the gap now is just over a second, which is bad news for the German of Alex Mosin, but still, I say a long way to go. 57 minutes is not exactly a long time, really, when you look at it. It's very much a sprint to the finish now, but still plenty of time for that gap to come down. Maybe a bit more traffic could play into the advantage of the German, but it's great to see that despite the pit stop sequence very much causing a divide in this class, we're still seeing some good racing. One that is very, very close, but unlikely to cause some good racing, is this battle here between the two Mackenbergs for the lead in the GTX.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far they're going to fight each other here and what's going to happen quite, but we'll see. Marvin behind Sven as we run through the opening sector of this circuit, down the very gentle hill, I suppose it's not really a hill at all, through 4, 5 and then into 6, and then the tighter right-hander at 7. It's really awkward sort of long corner that you kind of want to make into one long double apex kind of thing, but as I mentioned earlier on, it's not ideal for front left tyres. There's no doubt about that. A little bit wide from Sven Mackenberg. Marvin gets down the inside just a little bit through turn 9. They'll run on to the back straight, and we'll see now whether Marvin really wants to hold on to this slipstream and keep lifting off, or whether we want to go to a bit of a fight here. Side by side between the two Mackenbergs. Marvin on the outside line. He will break kind of late, and he'll run it round the outside at turn 10, giving you the inside for 11, but Sven has it covered off in the end, and he will remain in first place.
A nice battle forming between the brothers. Definitely, obviously, rivalry there. They've finished multiple times in either order, so they certainly know how to get in front. But of course, we want to see a nice, clean battle, and they're doing a good job. Berker hasn't been able to keep up with them, and certainly, turning into a nice lead battle for the overall class here on the new KTM GTX. It's great to see, and it's turning into a pretty nice car, actually. So let's see how this battle continues as we get up towards 55 minutes remaining in this race, and Marvin, who was at one point down in 5th place, is now challenging for the lead.
Indeed so. Marvin Mackenberg has done a really, really good job. The pace has been there, the consistency's been there, and now the only opponent he's got is his own brother, which obviously is potentially a good thing, could be a bad thing, because Marvin Mackenberg obviously knows all of Sven's tricks, but also Sven knows all of Marvin's tricks, so it sort of cancels itself out in that regard. But a bit of traffic again could spark the opportunity for Marvin to find a way through. It's been a brilliant fight in of itself. There's Stoffmill and Mosin as well, jostling for position towards the top end of the GT4 field as well, squeezing his way through. That KTM did not want to give any space to the GTX KTM, of course, but Marvin Mackenberg getting the poor end of it as they work their way through turn number 3, which obviously is going to benefit Sven Mackenberg to give him a bit of breathing room, but not a lot, because Marvin Mackenberg is very, very motivated and wants to be the top sibling going to the Mackenberg dinner table.
Yes. That's quite an argument to be having. Mosin, though, through on Stoffmill. Looks like that's just been completed on the previous lap. It's all playing into the hands of Zabdir here, who's grown his lead out to nearly 8 seconds here. I think the fight for second is going to be an interesting one, but I'm not sure the lead is going to be involved in it anymore. That KTM, once again, I'd imagine, has just been shown up on the straights, and for all of its handling through the corners here, Cam, it just, you can't really do. It's difficult to race with a car like this. I can imagine how frustrating it must be, and just how difficult Stoffmill must be finding it, because obviously the braking zones and the straights are where you want to make moves, and when you're just written off from doing that at all times, it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah, so what's really happening here is Stoffmill, of course, is being held up, all thinking about diving it down the inside into turn 7, but Mosin holds on for now. But what's basically happening is he's not able to use his full potential in the corners, and then, of course, is naturally losing out on the straight. So while it kind of looks like Mosin has the same speed as such, obviously if Stoffmill got ahead and got out of the slipstream, out of the draft range, he'd be able to pull away like Zabdir has. When they have absolutely no competition, they have the clean tracks themselves, they can do the pace and it's faster. But the issue is, as soon as you get cars around you, you can't use that speed in the corners, and therefore you overall go a bit slower as well. And these guys, actually do have to think about Farkash, who's just a little bit in behind there, but certainly if and when Stoffmill can get ahead, he will pull away. But if Mosin can hold on in the corners and just use the speed on the straights, then that, of course, is going to keep him in that second position for now.
It is indeed, but yeah, these guys have been at each other's throats for the majority of the race so far, whether it be with company, whether it just be by themselves. Either way, they've really given each other a good fight and a good tussle and really testing the limits of the pair of them. Unfortunately, it's not quite for the race lead because Zabdir sort of ran off with things out in front. 7.7 seconds is the gap now between first and second, but yeah, good little fight here materialising for second place, which is definitely not what really I expected. I did sort of expect the GT4s to maybe at the very least stay quite close, but now we've got 5 seconds, so it's still a fight at the end of the day. Here's Daniel Barker, who is trying to close the gap to obviously the two Mackenbergs in front. Here's also a fight between Ika and Butler, I believe, for 6th place in the GTXs. So, well, the first stint saw the GT4s take all the action, and now stint number 2 sees some of the GTXs actually finally getting close.
Yeah, the reason we're getting confused between Burker and Ecott is because they're in exactly the same livery, which does happen from time to time. And so that could confuse us. Thankfully, they're not fighting each other, otherwise we'd have a real nightmare. Because we're having quite a big one now, but there we are. This is the fight for 6th place instead. Just up in front is Jeff Ecott, James Butler just in behind. And you're right, it's GTXs fighting a little bit more in this second part of the race, but a lot of traffic through this point in the circuit, and there you can see most of it behind, while the BMWs having to be negotiated by the GT4s. So there's 3 different sets of laps going on here. The GT4 BMW is the one on the least amount of laps. Then we've got the 2 battling GT4s for second place. Then you've got a GTX coming through all at once. It's a proper multi-class race now. 50 minutes remaining, and there are cars everywhere, even cars on the same class now beginning to get lapped.
Oh, and look at Farkash there in the blue and white Mercedes really closing in on Stoffmill as that BMW gets out of the way. This is turning very quickly into a 3-way battle for second place, which is what we want to see. It's been a great battle in the GT4 category all afternoon, and this is obviously going to continue into the final stages and well into the final third of this 2.4 hours of Dubai as well, which is great to see. Sometimes, of course, with the endurance races, things can spread out and the battles don't continue, but we have not had that at all in both categories. We've got close battles for the top positions, and that is, yeah, just the thing that we want to see, and just showing you how these cars are working on RaceRoom.
Yeah, the continuity has been amazing. As we say, it's quite a luxury to have that from stint to stint, but definitely no complaints from us. It shows the competition level is very high. It shows the car and track combination as well has been very good, and also shows that the new content is very much being to the appeal of these drivers as well, because they're very close. It would have been interesting for the GTXs to see where Cody Nikola Letovsky would have been if he was able to carry on. There's the swap as well, Marvin and Sven Mackenberg swapping places for the race lead. The GTXs looming though, now they've sort of settled their dispute. Daniel Barker only 2 seconds back. It was about 3.5 seconds towards the a couple of laps after the pit lane sequence, and now they've had a bit of a fight. They might have a bit of a threat in the form of the Austrian, which obviously for the two brothers is something they don't really want to get engaged with. But yeah, how hard is Sven going to fight now, knowing that Barker's closed the gap?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. That's very wide from Mosin through turn 6 and 7, down the inside for Stoffmill, and he's through immediately. Mosin, for whatever reason, really struggling on this lap. Not sure why, but he's made a mistake down into 6, and now all of a sudden we've got Ben Farkas here as well. Out of turn 9, the Mercedes very close to the back of the McLaren, and we could see the German falling 2 places in the space of a lap here. The Mercedes tucked right in as much as he can behind the sleek Mercedes McLaren. It's not quite as quick in a straight line. The McLaren a little bit faster, but down the inside will go Farkas. It's a big looping line on the outside from Mosin, but too much on the outside, I think. Through turn 11, it's Farkas on the outside this time. He can't quite seal the deal. They'll remain side by side into turn 12, but Mosin does indeed lose 2 places in 1 lap.
Such a small mistake, and it's been a big effect for Mosin, going down 2 places from 2nd to 4th over the space of pretty much about 3 corners of this Dubai Autodrome. And that just shows you how much these drivers are on the limit. They are pushing every braking zone, every apex, every corner. And if you just miss one by just a meter or so, it can really put you offline. And Farkash has come from nowhere. He's been in about 5th place, 6th place the whole race, sat behind that top battle, and is now onto the podium with just about 45 minutes to go in this race. Great endurance driving from him, and he's now trying to chase down, of course, 2nd place with Stoffmill. The good thing for Stoffmill, though, is he's pretty much got out of that slipstream range just about, and if he can do that, he might be able to pull away like we've seen Zabdir do already.
Yeah, the slipstream has actually taken quite a precedence in this race, which is interesting in of itself. But yeah, if Stoffmill can sort of put some good laps in, now's the time to do it, really make the most of his car, while Farkash and Mosin sort of settle their own little squabble in the background. And well, if he can really do that, then he's not really going to be contested for 2nd, and then the fight for the podium comes down to 2. But yeah, Farkash really has been in this for the long game, so respect to him, because he was just looming towards the back end, just sort of staring at the lead for quite some time over the course of the first sort of hour. And then now it's really ramped up in sort of the second half, where he's catapulted himself ahead of 2 contenders and found himself now into 3rd place, obviously helped by Philip Power's misfortune, I suppose, in terms of that extra incident in terms of a 2nd stop or whatever it was. But now he's found himself onto a podium, which I'm sure he's going to fight tooth and nail for. But also for Mosin, to have that stripped away from him is something that he's not really going to want to see at all. Finishing 4th is would be quite a bittersweet ending to this race for Mosin, considering his potential to do quite well. So you can definitely bet that these two are going to go at it for the final 46 minutes.
They definitely are. And I just wonder now, Cam, what Stoffmill can do now that he's got clean air. As you mentioned earlier on, and you explained far more concisely than I ever could, about how the KTM was really being almost stopped by those in front. When it has a car in front, you really can't maximise the potential of that car. But I just wonder what he can do now. He's in clean air. I'm not suggesting he could maybe catch Zabdir at this stage, because the gap's nearly 9 seconds and they're in the same car. That seems like a tall order. But in terms of staying away and holding on to 2nd, I'm interested to see what he can do with clean air now.
Yeah, the KTM looks fast in that clean air from what we're seeing. Of course, 2 KTMs leading the way in the GT4 category, but we'll see how that one continues. We have to see what Farkash's pace is. Obviously caught up a bit due to the battling and things like that, but when it comes down to it, is the pace going to be there? We'll see what they're doing as they come across the line, and it does look like Farkash has the pace actually. In fact, all of the drivers pretty much doing the same time in the top 5, really, if you include D'Amico as well, all within about a 1/10 of a second of each other on the last lap, and even Filippo in behind about a 1/10 faster. So the pace is very equal in this category, and that just shows you why we're seeing such a close battle. There's nothing to give between any of these drivers, as Stoffmill actually gets held up a little bit there by traffic. That might swing the way of the battle a little bit if he can't get past quickly.
Absolutely, and it speaks volumes to the level of competition that we've got right here. It also means that those that succeed have had to find just that little bit extra relative to those around them. Obviously, Maris Abdir is doing a brilliant job out in front to stretch the advantage as well as he is, and it just shows how consistent that is. There's Marvin Mackenberg, though, off the road. He's going to lose 2nd place back to Daniel Berker, who works his way through, continuing maybe to be on the counter-attack, but that is huge for a driver who was once in control of this race, now finds himself on the fringes of the podium. Fortunately, Lino is 38 seconds back and whatnot, so a podium is fairly secure. However, running wide there has cost him the place to Berker, and well, now he's got a task at hand if he wants to claw back and get back into contention.
He definitely does. A big moment in the course of this race as Marvin Mackenberg loses the lead and loses a lot of time to his brother as well. Daniel Berker will get through and possibly be Sven Mackenberg's best friend here very soon, because if these two start to fight once again, the overall race leader will be able to get away a little bit more effectively. But that is a big moment, and it's especially soul destroying, I think, for Marvin Mackenberg here, really, because he worked so hard for so long to get into that lead. Now he's finally see it just to go away very, very quickly, all in one go. and it's a real shame for him. Out through the final couple of corners they'll go. The gap's more than 3 seconds right now, just over 3 seconds. It's not an unclosable gap by any means, but so frustrating for Marvin Mackenberg, who put so much work in to get the lead, and it's all been thrown away in one moment there.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's literally just one mistake from a couple of these drivers and they're losing places. Even, very quickly coming up towards 2 hours gone in the race. It's insane just how close everyone stayed. Of course, there's some bigger gaps that have worked out, but for the most part, the top battles are close between multiple drivers. It's amazing to see, and especially this one at the front of the GT4s that we've been following for pretty much the whole of the middle part of this race. As it stands, Zabdi is well up the road now by about 8 or 9, almost 9 seconds actually, which is pretty crazy considering how close it's been. But then, of course, Stoffmill holding on to that second place for quite a while with Farkas and Mosin in behind, and unfortunately D'Amico's just a little bit too far to really get involved in this battle, but amazing to see this three-way fight for second place.
Absolutely, and well, Farkas is bringing his way back into contention slowly but surely. Mosin is back onto the scene as well, which obviously is only good news for this fight. Not going to be good news so much so for the KTM of Stoffmill, because he's going to want to have the easiest run as possible to the end of this race to secure second place with the fast lap as well. Definitely a good result. That's getting a little bit sketchy with some of the traffic, and Mosin's going to want this to be over as soon as possible. Doesn't want the traffic really to affect him too much, but again, that's been pretty much the story of the race. But this is a particularly busy moment because you've got the entire fight for second, and then obviously some in that, is that the lead fight for the GTX as well?
Yeah, that's just maybe bolt upright in my seat, to be honest, because it's a battle for the lead going through the battle for second place in the two categories. When these two find themselves together, it makes for quite a mess and quite a bit of traffic to negotiate. Sven Mackenberg loses pretty much all of his 3-second lead to Daniel Burker, who gets through quite effectively. We've also got Mike Stoffmill with a bit more of a gap there as well as a result of some of this traffic, so that's very helpful to him. But all of a sudden, we've got 3 cars separated by less than 2 seconds, and it just shows you another example of what traffic can do.
Yeah, traffic is the sort of name of the game, really, when it comes to this. It can change things very quickly, and if you just catch them slightly at the wrong point, you can always start going backwards. We see that the BMW going completely over the curb there, trying to get out of the way of this top 3 battle. The top 3 in the GTX is now within 2 seconds of each other. They've spread out, they swap positions multiple times, and as it comes back to it, we've got the 2 Mackenbergs with Burker in the middle, coming towards 40 minutes to go in this race. Burker a little bit wide there, actually. Mackenberg closing in just a little bit. He's going to want to regain the lead that he had just a short time ago.
And he sees the opportunity to do so. The gaps have closed to his brother and obviously the rival of Burker in front. So it's one less task at hand. Obviously, maybe some more traffic could still play a factor, but the first task at hand is to find his way back past Burker. So then let's clear sights up to his brother of Sven Mackenberg just in front, now leading the way. And Sven Mackenberg, we've already sung his praises, but we'll do it some more because he really has had a very, very sensational race and practically pushing the man in second place is Marvin Mackenberg. Still some incidents with Bozo having a bit of an issue towards the back end of the GT4s, but our focus is firmly on this fight because Marvin Mackenberg is trying his absolute hardest to find an avenue through. He's so close to the rear end of the Austrian in front, but still not really able to find much of a way through it. I guess it's a different story for the GTXs because they're all in the same car, same chassis, same amount of horsepower, relatively same area, maybe a couple of adjustments to the setup. So it's not just a case of, like we saw with Philip Howe in the Lotus, of just driving faster in the straights. He's really got to work for this move.
It really does, as you do for any, I suppose. Into the final corner they'll go. Another KTM negotiated. That has to be a good win, I would imagine. Oh no, sorry, Zabdi, who's that far in front. It caught me off guard there. 9 seconds of a lead from Zabdi. He completes another lap to come on to lap 50 for the first time today. Will he? Maybe not. He'll go on to 49. There we are. But he's still very much in the lead by quite some distance ahead of Stoffmill, Farkas and Mosin, who are very close together. Luca D'Amico is 4 seconds behind, with Enzo Filippo another second back after that in the GT4 battle. But it doesn't quite seem like that at the moment. It seems like an even bigger fight with the likes of the BMW behind, one of the Mercedes just further behind there. That's Norge, I believe, in this terrain as well. It's very, very busy in this part of the racetrack for any GTX working their way through, and that just shows you why Sven Mackenberg lost so much of his lead, I suppose, because there are so many cars fighting for position in this part of the track.
And that just makes it a little bit more difficult because especially when it comes to the traffic, if there's GT4s battling ahead, say they're going too wide, that's extra width as the GTX car that you got to try and get around. Makes it that a little bit more difficult as Marvin now getting close to the back of Burka, making him just sort of go offline a little bit in the braking zone, actually go slow off the apex as well. We saw Burka completely miss that corner, if you remember, a few laps ago as well, which is what let him through. And once again goes wide does Burka, so Burka definitely feeling the pressure now as Marvin's trying to get a wider line here, trying to get a better exit down towards the sort of final hairpin. Burka once again going wide, really starting to struggle a little bit now.
He really is. The pressure is on, and Marvin Mackenberg smells blood, and he wants to capitalize on the vulnerability, because then it's just a straight line run potentially to get onto the back of his brother once more. Again, you can see just how close he's getting, nearly making contact to the rear diffuser of Daniel Burka, working their way through the left, then the right swing, and again, still not really able to find any avenue through. Once again, another braking zone, but not really heavy enough for Mackenberg to have any feasible opportunity. There's sideways through the final corner for Burka, and this might be exactly what Mackenberg needs. Burka knows that he's off just a little bit, slipstream, straight line speed, Mackenberg's chance. This is surely what he's got to seize.
Well, we've seen many times today Burka with the opposite lock on, really saving that KTM, but on this occasion, it very nearly cost him a place. Marvin Mackenberg on the outside line at turn 1, can't get through there. It's outside line at turn 3 and 4, that's very brave, and he's found himself out in the marbles, and he won't get round there either. This is now starting to cost him a bit of time, although Sven Mackenberg isn't exactly getting away too much as of right now. I do worry a little bit about Burka though, and the car control he has there, because clearly he's been able to keep it under wraps so far in the first 3 quarters of this race, but as you saw there, that car clearly is a little bit unstable, just sort of integrally almost. It seems like it could snap on him at almost any moment.
Yeah, that is potentially showing the signs of over pushing. That might get worse and worse as we get further into the race. We'll have to find out. Burka there potentially goes a little bit deep. No, brings it back to the apex nicely. Once again though, Marvin does go faster on the apex of that corner, and Burka, with all these little mistakes, is starting to let Sven Mackenberg get way up ahead. So this is easily turning into a battle for P2, and Marvin just needs to keep putting the pressure on, and eventually a gap will open up and he'll be able to find a way through.
Absolutely, but yeah, definitely concerns going the way of Burka. It's a positive feedback loop that's obviously working in a negative way relative to Burka, because the more he pushes his tyres, the worse they get, the more, the more he slides, the worse they get, etc, etc. You get the picture. It's just that snowball effect of constantly running through, and yeah, for Burka, definitely struggling just a little bit, and Mackenberg knows that, because, well, you can see his brother getting just that little bit further away, corner by corner, lap by lap, and he's going to want to try and clear the Austrian as soon as possible, as to not risk getting held up. But yeah, Burka gave him pretty much the opportunity on a silver platter, but it was well defended, obviously. And Mackenberg really is struggling, and I'm not necessarily overly sure as the reason why, because it's not necessarily a case of, there's a lack of overtaking opportunities, because we've seen time and time again these drivers and everyone sort of, in the GT4s and almost in the GTXs as well, have been able to find their way through quite easily, particularly in battles like these. But Mackenberg is seemingly struggling just a little bit, which is strange given his situation. You'd thought he'd want to, push the situation a little bit more and be a bit more aggressive, but he's just not, which is strange.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that Mackenberg was really aggressive enough there on his attempts to, especially at turn 1 down there. I'm just not sure he was did quite enough to really go through there or warrant actually making the pass. So it was close, but you've got to really be decisive as well, and especially when you're on the outside line. Mackenberg didn't quite do that. So 34 minutes to go. He may still feel as if time is on his side here, because Sven Mackenberg seems to keep getting caught up in traffic. The gap briefly dipped below 2 seconds there as he was negotiating another BMW, one of the GT4s, still running at this stage in the race. We have had quite a few retirements, by the way, from the opening of this race. Oh, Zabdir indeed. How the hell did we miss that? Well, Zabdir is all of a sudden out of this race, and we've no idea why. Well, I've no idea why anyway. Goodness me, that was... well, he's just mentioned in the YouTube chat, disconnected, and, well, That is a real shame for Marius Zabdir. He was surely going on to win that race. Now no longer in it, and that's the second time we said that this race.
That is such a shame. Both Lakovsky and Zabdir leading their classes by quite some way, and is out of the race. Insane how this race has turned around over the course of the couple of hours we've had so far. As Stoffel takes over the lead in that GT4 category. Really opened the door for him. Hasn't really led on pace at all over the course of the race, but has been given the opportunity. Farkash up into second place, having sat behind in fifth for so long, really just opens up the opportunities. But what a shame there for Zabdir.
A big one, a big one. He's come runner-up so many times. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he came runner-up with the 2.4 hours of Daytona 2 years in a row, potentially, if I'm thinking correctly. But the 2023 one, for sure, he came second. He's come runner-up a number of times, and as I said in qualifying, he was hoping today was going to be his day. He felt confident, and he looked very confident, and it was almost his for the taking. But the RaceRoom gods obviously have said otherwise, which is a shame for the pole. But well, let's hope it doesn't knock his confidence for the next one, and hopefully he can come back stronger with that motivation. But yeah, very poor ending for Marius Zabdir, which is a shame, but it does mean that the fight for the lead is now incredibly close, or a lot closer than it was, let's put it that way. Here's Enzo Filipao working his way up the field slowly but surely, now into fifth place and knocking on the door of Luca D'Amico for fourth. He's, well, not given up, and I think that's good signs from the Frenchman.
It is. He's clearly got the pace here, but just a setback through the pit stop phase, and it's too much to recover, I think. Out of turn 7, he will go, and it will be around the outside at 8 and 9. Oh dear, that was close. A bit closer than expected. It will be a big job for him to be able to make it around the hairpin there, even with the banking that you do get around it. It's more likely to come on the straight, where we've seen the Lotus so strong so far, although we haven't really matched the Porsche Cayman up against any other manufacturers just yet. It seems to be putting on a good showing here. Down in towards turn 10, Filippo forced to the outside line. It's late on the brakes, but not as late as D'Amico, who goes even later and jams it up the insides as Enzo Filippo, maybe a bit too aggressively, but you can tell we're nearing on the final half an hour here, because it's getting a little bit more aggressive. Filippo to the outside line at turn 12, and once again he's going to be the one to be aggressive on the brakes, and once again he's going to get shut out by the Porsche.
And this is getting close between the two, side by side for multiple apexes now. Filippo trying to use that extra straight line speed that we've seen that Lotus have up towards the final couple of corners in, towards turn 14, as we've seen D'Amico there on the inside, brakes way earlier. Filippo all the way around the outside. Can he hold it on just about there, as we're going 3 wide now with one of the KTM all the way around the outside. Huge contact between the two. Somehow they're still going in a straight line, and somehow D'Amico has held on.
He has somehow, but back to the offensive procedures for Enzo Filipao. He has been unrelenting in terms of the pressure through the final corner and practically pushing D'Amico through, trying to find an avenue through. Defensive goes the Porsche. Enzo Filipao trying to use the Lotus's advantage in terms of the straight line speed, but it seems the Porsche just got that little bit more out to the left-hand side. It's the long way around, of course, of turn number 1 as they dip their way downhill. No way through on Filipao this time through. Blocking the cutback does Luca D'Amico, which is fantastic defensive driving for him, and he does not want to give this 4th place up anytime soon.
Definitely does not, and this is a good fight between the two of them. I've no idea how they're all still going, by the way. That 3 wide moment through the penultimate corner was absolutely outrageous, and somehow, I couldn't quite identify the GTX in time, but it could have been Timo Pipper maybe. He's got the most orange car, that's the only way I'm guessing. It was quite remarkable. And somehow they're all still going, but it is aggressive from D'Amico right now, and from Filippo as well. Maybe they've realised that 4th place might be the best we get here. We've got more than half a minute behind us, over 8 seconds in front. You know, they might as well fight for it, I suppose.
Well, absolutely, it's a position, and as ever, if you feel like you're faster, you're going to want to, you're going to want to go past Filippo. There tried it so hard on that fight on that previous lap that he sort of lost out a little bit in the end. So he needs to try and work out that momentum again. He's definitely the faster driver, and it would be good for him to get up in the top 4, just from the fact that he was obviously leading, got pole position earlier. But we'll have to see if that one continues as we come back to the battle in the GTXs. And once again, it flip-flops, and it looks like it's the way of Burka, who seems to be closing in now on Sven. And it's getting certainly quite close between these drivers. Once again, they got a bit of a bit of the track to themselves. So just using their pace as it stands, maybe waiting for some traffic to try and make a move.
That might be the case. It does seem, though, that Sven Mackenberg just seems to get caught a lot during traffic, and I'm not entirely sure why. But maybe he's being a little bit more conservative. But I've got to say as well, Cam, I'm a little bit concerned about Burker's fuel consumption in the first half of this race. I did notice that he came in at least a lap or two short of the halfway mark, and he's going to have to overcompensate for that in the second half of the race. And I haven't really seen him slow down too much, so I wonder whether he can make it as the battle for fourth place continues. They'll stay single file. No, Filippo is still looking for the move.
We'll dive down the inside turn one, maybe no, holds into the racing line for now as D'Amico just goes slightly wide of the apex. That's going to pinch him in turn two. That's going to slow him down as they're going to do a switcheroo, I was going to say, through turn three, as we're seeing the Lotus there not able to get past of Filippo coming through the chicane into sort of the turn 6-7 part of the track. This is of course where we see dives down the inside sometimes, not this time around though, as Filippo once again has to sit in behind. We've seen this quite a few times. He's definitely the faster driver, just needs to find a way through. Maybe it is up the inside of turn 9, not quite this time.
Not quite, but Filippo is again really pounding on the pressure, and Luca D'Amico is doing a really good job at thwarting it. In all fairness, obviously it takes two to tango, as Filippo's offense has been really good, so too equally if not better D'Amico's defense has been good as well, and obviously it's the first time we've really seen the Porsche in terms of contention. First time it's really showcased heavily in terms of the broadcast, and this fight is really doing it a lot of favors, and particularly Luca D'Amico as well in terms of his race. And well, it's very impressive defending, let's put it that way, but also very respectable as well. They're not being overly aggressive, the pair of them, both giving each other plenty of room, and well, it's been a very clean fight, and well, unfortunately there's still 26 minutes left of it.
Plenty of time remaining in this one for Marvin Mackenberg to maybe go from third to, well, he was fifth earlier on, wasn't he? Up to first and then back down to third and then maybe up to first again here in the final 26 minutes. 3 for the lead here, covered by less than a second and a half in the Dubai 2.4 hour here on RaceRoom. It's been a fantastic race so far, I've got to say. Less than a second is the gap in GTX. 1.2 seconds is the gap in GT4. It's very close to being 2 KTM wins here. This is the battle for fourth place as well, which has been very interesting. Enzo Filippo trying to make his way through on Luca D'Amico. They're both very much on their own in terms of positions further in front and further behind. The top three absolutely away. Orban miles behind. They're fighting over this one as if their life depends on it. Still 25 minutes to go, and it's still nail-biting stuff really in multiple battles.
Yeah, great race to be honest. I've really enjoyed this 2.4 hours of Dubai. But we've seen so many different battles up and down the field in the various positions. Also, yellow flag. Marvin Mackenberg has got. He's spun around at the final corner. Very interesting facing the wrong way. I guess he's just looped it, maybe coming on the power. Something's definitely happened there, but that from your former race leader is now down almost 10 seconds off the lead and is really starting to make a few mistakes in the previous sort of 15 minutes or so. Yeah,
it's been a shame, and yeah, he really did have quite a firm hold since the Macedonia of Cody Nikola Lotowski's incident. And sort of seized control and didn't really look backwards. But back to this fight here, Enzo Filippo versus Luca D'Amico. Which way is the Lotus going to go? He opts to the outside, tries to get the up and under, blocked by the Porsche. And I have to say, for quite a slender car as that Porsche came in, it's quite narrow relative to other Porsche counterparts. He's really done a great job of making it incredibly wide, which is very much respect to the Italian. He's done a fantastic job, as we've said constantly. But Enzo Filippo, he's looking for every possible way through, and it just isn't coming. And well, he relied on the straight line speed earlier in the race to sort of initiate some moves, and now the Porsche's really got an answer for him. So brilliant stuff, and again, a brilliant race. But Sven Mackenberg, Daniel Back, also separated by not too much. Very late on the brakes goes the Lotus. He's really pushing, and you can tell as to how eagerly he wants that fourth place.
Very eagerly at this time. Yeah, there we go. I can speak English. Working out my sentences as I'm going along here. Final corner. And not many laps remaining. Enzo Filippo to the outside, looking for that late apex and a better run to the front straight. That's what he's certainly got. And that Lotus once again will be searching for the slipstream, searching for the inside line, and Luca D'Amico's not going to give it to him. The Porsche closing off that opportunity. down the hill towards the first turn. And it's going to be Filippo looking for a different way through, you'd imagine. He has started to find this a little bit difficult at the initial moments when he actually caught him. He was having a bit of joy, actually, Filippo, in terms of actually making moves, or at least having attempts at moves. But as this is going on, D'Amico is getting better and better at learning what Filippo's going to do and defending from it.
Yeah, you do get comfortable when you get into these battles that last quite a while. You work out where the other cars are fast, where the other driver maybe makes consistent mistakes, and we'll have to see. But Filippo here, he dived up the inside of turn 8 and towards turn 9 a couple of laps ago. Tries it once again, not quite the room that time around, as the Porsche of D'Amico holds on for now. Let's see if the straight line speed is going to be working this lap. The Lotus pretty close, but actually the Porsche just pulls away a little bit there through sort of second, third, fourth gear. As we get up towards sixth gear though, is there going to be any room for improvement with the GT4? Lotus coming in behind, not quite enough actually, so that Porsche looks fast in a straight line too. As we're seeing D'Amico there just cover off the apex, goes a little bit wide actually. Filippo there's going to be getting the run, can't get the power down though, and that opportunity is going to be gone.
It is indeed. It was a good look, but unfortunately not quite enough. However, he's got another go here, working his way through now, convincingly side by side with D'Amico into the next right hand. The Lotus has got to swing himself all the way around the outside once again, get some insane rotation to the rear end, but not quite enough to get the switch back. He's now pulled himself alongside once more. It is going to be the outside line again for Filippo. D'Amico able to hang on. Is he going to find himself underneath the Porsche once again? No is the answer to that. D'Amico's got the answer, but once again drifting his way around the outside goes Filippo. Beautiful stuff between the pair of them, but still, unfortunately for the Frenchman, no advancement. And the way this track switches itself left to right, it just invites itself for switchbacks like this, and once again to the outside, enthralling stuff.
It absolutely is. Filippo getting more and more aggressive as this race goes on. You wouldn't have seen him do this two hours ago. Oh, goodness. This is Smeeks coming through in the GTX category, making it free wide very briefly. Filippo looks outside, looks inside, but the Porsche's got the legs again. Going down towards turn number 1, and Filippo will have to stay behind all over again, although it's wide from D'Amico. In towards turn 1, through 2 they'll go. It's a better line from Filippo, and once again switching back and forth they'll go, looking inside, looking outside. The Frenchman looking everywhere. He's looking even off the track, up the curve at turn 4. Down the hill they'll go. He's surely going to have a look at turn 7 as they get into the brakes. D'Amico knows it. He dives deep on the brakes there at the right-hander. He's still in front. This is a fantastic battle with the aggression only turning higher as the laps go by. 20 minutes to go, and it's hard to know which of these two is going to prevail.
They're so perfectly matched on pace and also aggression. They're really pushing each other to the limit, and it seems their cars are actually a lot more balanced than we saw between some other battles, as Farkas and Mosin also batting for second place now, as Farkas has been there for quite a while, but Mosin's starting to come back as we get towards the final 20 minutes of this race. And of course with Filippo in behind, we've got two battles of two cars inside the top 5 inside the final 20 minutes of a 2.4-hour race. I'd say that's pretty good, as Alec there goes off at the back end of your GT4 field. Filippo though all the way around the outside. Can he hold on to it? No, he still can't get the power down when he's all the way around the outside of these corners.
He's very wide once again. Back to this fight as Mosin tries to negotiate his way back to the inside of Farkas. Has got the advantage this time. Once again to the outside as the advantage swings the way of the Hungarian, but once more Mercedes has got the advantage and stays in front. It is beautiful to see. We've got 5 different chassis, all within the top 5. Obviously, Stoffmüller is running away with it just a little bit, but Farkas, Mosin, D'Amico and Filippo all giving their absolute best into the final 20 minutes of this 2.4-hour race. It's been action from start to finish, and it is definitely going to be a very, very dramatic finale, particularly this fight for second. The fight for fourth as well is going to boil down right to the end. In towards turn number 1 once more. Farkas is still in front, but a little bit of a twitch there, and that might swing the advantage back the way of the McLaren.
Oh, good Lord. I thought most it was in the wall there. Apologies. The McLaren went really, really sideways out of turn 2. And as you can see, at the end of this race, as the tyres begin to wear down towards the end of another stint, Mosin struggling again. And I do fear slightly that this could be it for the German, because we saw this at the end of the last stint, Cam. He really fell away towards the end. Sabte was able to build a big lead because of Mosin in second place. He was holding everyone back, but he was losing time. And I just wonder whether he's done it again in terms of chewing through his tyres too much. I wonder whether that McLaren may be chewing through its tyres a little bit too much at this stage, because he's losing a lot of ground now.
Yeah, it certainly is, but I think the battle is still on there as we come to this battle for the overall lead in your GTX category. Sven Mackenberg holding on, but Burka all over the back of him, getting the slipstream down this back straightaway up towards the turn 10 hairpin, where we've seen so much action so far in this 2.4 hours of Dubai. To the outside, Burka goes. He's braking too late quite a few times this race so far. Side by side on the apex between the two. Sven is just going to slightly nudge him out wide, getting to the racing line for the inside of turn 11 is going to be able to hold on, but Burka really looking for the race lead now.
What a finale we've got in store for us here today. We've got fights in the GT4s. The lead fight now for the GTX's Burka has finally found his footing, has finally found maybe a second wind of pace versus Sven Mackenberg, and he's putting the pressure on, piling it on. He's been sort of sat in second or third for the majority of this race, never really had the opportunity to take the helm and take control of the 2.4 hours of Dubai. Now he's got an opportunity to do so, and he's got to absolutely hammer the pressure on. He can't let Sven Mackenberg get into that security once again, because as soon as he does, it could spell dangerous for Burka. He just has to put the pressure on lap after lap, sit in the mirrors, and maybe force him into a mistake. Back to this fight for the GT4s though. Farkash versus Mosin once again takes to the pit straight. And you can see just in the background actually our GTX lead fight once more. So once again our very entertaining battles are once again going to overlap in towards turn number 1 once more, and Farkash still has the advantage, but all it takes is one teensy tiny mistake to ruin the momentum, and well, straight away the German's going to be back on his case.
I think the pace of these two classes means that this is going to be the last time those two leaders come through, the leaders in the GT4 category. We do have Mike Strothmo out to quite a distance now, nearly 4 seconds to Betts Farkas and Alex Mosin now. Luca D'Amico and Enzo Filippo as well also have a bit of a gap between them. These two are very close, but I think due to the pace difference that the leaders are going to come through one more time here. Still has that cloud over his head though, Burka, I believe, here in this one, whether he can make it on fuel. And Mosin, whether he can make it on tyres as well, in terms of, or at least at a good pace, because I don't know if he can. But of course, we'll wait and see. 16 minutes to go, and I do wonder who at this stage is going to be looking at their fuel gauge with a little bit of concern.
Was this battle for the GTX is going to be held up a little bit by the GT4s. Sven dives up the inside of turn 11. He knows this is crucial. That's going to push Mosin out of this battle for his own second place, as Burka now is getting closer once again. Sven now has to go up the inside of turn 12. Contact between Burka and Farkash. That is going to allow Mosin to come up and potentially take second place.
It might well indeed. Oh my words, the overlap between the two battles has caused a bit of an upset. Now side by side, Mosin and Farkash, who's got the advantage going through the long sweeping left-hander. It does swing the way of the Mercedes, but as they head their way onto the brakes, it's Mosin that sails that McLaren the long way round, continuing to try and jostle over the advantage. Now it swings the way of the McLaren as they sweep their way into the next right-hander. Beautiful stuff, but Farkash is just as committed. He takes to the outer extremities of the circuit with his foot in, and now downhill braking once more. They continue to go side by side, but the advantage swings the way to Mosin. He's going to try and squeeze the Mercedes out as far as he can. Now it's a drag race towards turn 1.
What a fight this is. Great respect between the two as well, as they go neck and neck over the line. Still quarter of an hour to go here. The McLaren has the legs on the straight though. There's another GTX down the inside. That's Marvin Mackenberg making his way through. It's outside line for Farkas, but he can't do anything. The McLaren is back through again. Mosin into second place. What a fantastic battle, but you get the feeling it won't be over.
Yeah, this is a great battle here in Dubai. Things go either way, and just the little mistakes, the little incidents change the battles of Farkash almost diving up the inside there of turn 6, and just one little bit of traffic between the leaders of GTX fighting for position changes the way of the GT4s fighting for their own position and second place in fact as well. So quite an important one. It's just amazing how these things work out, and that's just part of racing really. I mean, I don't think Sven Mackenberg necessarily did anything wrong. He obviously is faster, can go up the inside of the corners, but it does change the way of the battles for these drivers in the traffic in the slower classes. As we come up the back straight away though, it does seem that Mosin just has enough to hold on to this second place, at least for now.
At least for now is the crucial wording of that sentence, in the sense that it could still go either way. They're sideways for the Mercedes. That's not really going to help his case whatsoever, and as long as Mosin can keep it nice and composed, he might well see himself still drifting that Mercedes is Farkash, which definitely tells me that he pushed the car a little bit too hard in his squabble with Mosin. Clark unfortunately having a bit of an issue down in the Porsche, unfortunate for the Frenchman of course, but yeah, I think Mosin just has the tidier driving style. At this point in the race, the McLaren definitely seems to be more stable. That's definitely playing to his advantage in trying to extend that gap. And you can see visually he's sort of been able to pull the gap out at least a couple of car lengths, which is alleviating some of the pressure. And unfortunately for Farkas, he's not going to be able to maybe hang on for second place, but still third is a good shout. We'll see. But yeah, well, we've still got this fight for fourth to peel our eyes onto.
Do we need this as well? we've got enough going on, thanks. Second place in GT4, also fourth place at the battle for the lead, just petering out a little bit right now. I wonder whether the contact between Burke and that little bit of and that Mercedes on your screen right now has maybe affected both of them, because Burke has gone out to 2 seconds and Farkas has lost a bit of time here as well. All of a sudden, Mosin looks like he might have enough to stay in second place here, but we do have that one for fourth in GT4 to enjoy as well. And by the way, GT4 very well balanced at the moment. All of the top 5 positions taken up by 5 different manufacturers, which is exactly what we want to see.
Yeah, it's awesome. And even with the nationality of the drivers, there's so many different ones up there towards the top. I think, in fact, is every driver a different nationality as well? That is pretty incredible. Two Frenchmen there in the field and a couple of Hungarians. But yeah, certainly a very mixed field. As we're getting to the battle, back with Filippo diving up the inside of turn 8 and 9. He's done this a few times, hasn't been able to make it work. D'Amico has to go wide as Filippo side by side on the apex of turn 9. Is he going to run out wide, take that position? Yes, he does. Does the Porsche have anything to come back though in the slipstream?
That's going to be the question. The Porsche has looked quite strong in terms of the slipstream now. The heavy braking zone of the hairpin of turn number 10 getting squeezed. Enzo Filippo brings it over to the left-hand side of shot, brings it back very late to try and swing his way to the outside. Very brave on the brakes of that Lotus. Even braver is the Porsche. They make contact as they work their way through. Filippo takes off the circuit, now brings himself now to the left-hand side as they work their way up the hill through turn 11. The advantage swings the way of the Frenchman, who takes fourth place. But Luca D'Amico did not like that whatsoever. He's going to be trying his best to make sure that he does not get away.
Well, he's finally done it now, Filippo. He's taken quite some time, but the aggression has finally paid off. He's, as I mentioned, just been turning the aggression up gently throughout the race. At the start, he was quite passive, really, and when he lost the lead to Zabdir earlier on, didn't put up too much of a fight at all. But now, more than 2 hours down the line, he's being very aggressive, and he's being much more successful as a result as well. The gap, 13 seconds to Ben Farkas. These guys have known for quite some time, I think, that they're not going to get on the podium today, but they've hopefully had a good time fighting with one another, although I think it could be over now. Filippo has looked faster, despite the battling. He's looked faster throughout the entirety of this fight.
Yeah, he's been fast for the previous sort of 20 minutes or so. And yeah, I think he's just going to be able to pull away now. And sort of Mosin's been able to do that as well, actually, in this battle. Farkas has dropped off a little bit. He did get up to second place, held that for quite a while, but after switching around, they have sort of spread out just a little bit as we're getting now to 10 minutes left in this race. And Stoffmill is out of the picture now up the road. So definitely it's... yeah, just a battle between those two guys for the final podium places. And Stoffmill is absolutely loving this in that number 8 Golf machine, coming down this back straightaway. Obviously gifted the lead a bit earlier with Zabdir DNFing from the race, but has not looked back since then.
You really do have to manufacture your own luck when it comes to motor racing. Yes, obviously, Zabdir DNFing has helped Stoffmill get into that position, but he still had to be the man in second place in order to take the reins after the disconnection. Could have very easily been Mosin, Farkas, Filippo, anyone else in the GT4 field, but it was Stoffmill, and he's taken that opportunity with both hands and has really not looked back since, as you said. And he's put the lap times in, he's put the consistency in, and, well, he has earned himself a rightful victor. Potentially could be a different story had Zabdir's connection said otherwise, but well, that's shoulda, coulda, woulda in all fairness. And now we've still got this fight as Marvin Mackenberg finds himself onto the back of Burke after a couple of incidents for the pair of them. Fight for second still rages on. Fortunately for Sven Mackenberg, he's got the margin to hopefully stay secure no matter what these two do, which begs the question, how hard are these two going to fight for second?
Well, absolutely. I think they could well fight very hard, to be honest. I think there's going to be 5 laps to go, including this one. here. So what's that going to be? 73 laps by the end of this. And Marvin Mackenberg was telling us earlier on that that was one of the two possibilities. Either that, or it would. Oh no, sorry, he was deciding between 72 and 73. So clearly, this race has been on the faster side compared to what he was expecting. But either way, it means they'll have to do 1:37 lap stint and 1:36. Well, we'll wait and see whether they can do that. Burka, though, has very much lost time to Sven Mackenberg. More than 5 seconds of a gap now to the race leader. And it's now Marvin Mackenberg right behind. We'll see if there's a move down here in towards turn 10. It's very much on slipstream. And a move down the inside. Not quite with the room. Burka pushes him right up on the curb. Well, he was very quick on the way in there, but had to get right up the curb at the hairpin. No way through for Marvin Mackenberg that time.
Yeah, my biggest fear is that Burka being a lap or two short in the first stint and then is effectively going to have to make up those 2 laps plus is an extra lap again in the next stint. Yep. So that's about 4 or 5 laps extra, surely, that he's got to do, although we're already past that in terms of minutes. So maybe he's actually saved more in the second stint. We'll find out soon enough if he's going to come and splash, as Marvin is starting to put the pressure on now. And is really trying to push his way back up into that second place. He hasn't really challenged so much since losing the lead about 30-40 minutes ago now, making a couple of mistakes here and there, and just not doing what he needed to do. As Burka holds on to second place, but 7 minutes to go. We are quickly getting to about 4 laps left in this race.
Indeed, so they both work their way past Andy Goodwin in that respective fight and trying to close the gap as best he can. The illusion of the camera actually for the pit straight is very deceiving. I thought Mackenberg was a lot closer to Burka than he actually was. The gap in reality was about 6 or 7 tenths by the time they got onto the brakes for turn number 1. But yeah, it's intriguing how even this late into the race, the strategy that happened, a little over an hour ago now, still is having that knock-on effect that we thought, all the dust had settled and everyone was clear to the end, but potentially not. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, we're feasting our eyes on the on-track battles as opposed to the game of chess that has been played throughout the duration of the entire race and with the pit stops and things like that. But very wide once again, goes back, trying to sweep out, tuck back in again, use the slight bit of camber on the inside of turn number 9 to hit best his advantage and get that run down the straight. However, Marvin Mackenberg still looking very, very menacing. And we said he wasn't looking too aggressive in the last time these two came to blows. Maybe this time's going to be a little bit different. He can't really afford to not be aggressive if he wants second place because, well, he's only got 6 minutes left of the race to go.
Well, that is true, but there are still 3 laps to go after this one, so I think he'll be fine in that respect. Well, we'll see. Up into turn 12 they'll go to the highest point of the circuit. I don't know if we can quite call it the highest point because it's probably about a metre above the lowest point, but you get the idea. It's a small rise, dropping down the hill towards turn 14. It's certainly very wide and inviting for anyone firing down the inside, but no chance here for Marvin Mackenberg. Maybe the BMW in front will... no. BMW getting out of the way. Very, very wide line through the penultimate turn there for... I think it was Thomas Alic, actually, who's currently running down in the last position of the GT4, so fair play to him for getting things out of the way and keeping this battle just about these two. It's Daniel Burka in front of Marvin Mackenberg. 3 laps to go, 5 minutes here at the 2.4 hours of Dubai. Mackenberg has not been able to offer any challenge in the last lap and a half.
Yeah, Burka's doing a good job. And it looks like there's going to be 2 laps left, I think. Yeah, 2 laps left at the end of this one. So I would assume from his strategy, if he was going to pit, it would be then. So maybe he was just pitting early to try some sort of undercut. I mean, it kind of has worked. He has been faster and he was really challenging at the beginning of this stint, but has fallen back, a decent way now to Mackenberg. So we'll see how that one works. But I would assume if he was going to pit, it would be potentially at the end of this lap for a splash. Let's wait and see. But Marvin is still putting on the pressure, trying to get this position too far back, though, to get the slipstream down this back straight away. You can see they've got actually a lapped GTX coming up ahead of them as well, so they need to be looking out for that one. But as come towards the braking zone for turn 10, Burka easily has this position covered for now.
again for now is the wow, that was
Wow.
Goodness
close.
me.
Yeah, okay, that happened. Mackenberg just decided to straight line a hairpin, which doesn't work for obvious reasons, and he's rejoined now. And yeah, that very much caught I think all three of us by quite a big surprise there. Got us a bit of a shock, but he's still in contention and hovering around about a second is the gap between the pair of them. And well, when time really isn't on your side, mistakes like that can be very costly.
Certainly can. That took me by surprise more than anything I've seen for a while there. Just completely came in at all sorts of wrong angles there, did Marvin Mackenberg. He's still in third, you understand, and going on to the penultimate lap, but goodness me, that was quite a moment. Alex Mosin has a second over Bent Farkas at the moment. That's the next closest fight, really, and I can't see it changing if I'm honest, but we'll keep an eye on it and see if it does. Oh, and well, there's our answer. Daniel, I look away for one moment. Daniel Burke is in the pit lane, so our fuel worries were confirmed there, Cam. 2 laps short in the end.
Ah, that's a shame. That's a shame because I just wonder. I just wonder if he was, because 1 lap per stint is what he needed. If he's 2 laps short, that's 1 lap per stint. And if you work it out, as I was saying earlier, if you have that 1 lap of fuel, which is obviously like, so many litres, like 3 litres, whatever. If you divide 3 litres by 35 laps, percentage or numerically is not that much to save per lap, which is why everyone else has done it. So it's just a bit of a shame. Obviously, either just wasn't able to do so, or maybe just didn't quite think of that strategy, which is a bit of a shame, because he's going to drop back. Is he going to keep in front of Lino?
Yeah.
I think, is he back on the track now? Yes, he is. So he's not going to really lose a position as such, but definitely completely take him out of contention if any of the Mackenbergs have issues on the final laps.
Ouch is the phrase I'd use for Daniel Burke. That is a big shame, and it seems that for a lot of our big contenders, luck really hasn't been on their side. Unfortunately, this is one of those things that Burke almost had full control of, and unfortunately didn't seize the opportunities as best he possibly could have. One that has done exactly that, though, is the race leader in the GTXs right now, Sven Mackenberg. Didn't necessarily get the best run in terms of qualifying, but has worked his way up slowly but surely to the front. Battled, of course, with his brother Marvin, and nailed the pit strategy in all fairness. Was consistent, clean, fast. Every attribute ticked every box did Sven Mackenberg, and well, now he's only got a handful of the penultimate lap now for him in order to take victory. So as long as he keeps it nice and clean and doesn't throw everything away in the final lap, he should be fairly good. And well, a Mackenberg one too. They'll be loving this right now, and maybe not exactly what they expected coming into today, but well, they'll be loving it coming out.
They will absolutely take that. And it is now the final lap of the 2.4 hours of Dubai. What a race it has been. And this is pretty much the first the first lap we've had all race where there's not been any battling here, Cam. It's been quite a remarkable race, to be honest.
Yeah, it has. To be honest, I really enjoyed it, and it's gone pretty quickly. In fact, now into the final minute. Stopping here, of course, might actually, he's going to make it towards the line anyway. But of course, he has to wait for Sven, the overall leader, to cross the line when the timer hits 0. So they will have a lap to go as well. And yeah, the battles in both classes have been so good up and down the field, not just for the top positions, but for the mid-pack as well. And it's great to see that even until the final 5 minutes, we didn't know who really was going to be finishing on the podium. And that just showed you that these classes and this track have produced a good race.
They certainly have. Sven Mackenberg with quite the gap. I wonder whether they're going to get a photo finish for the brothers as well. Into the final sector they will go. And it's going to be a win by just under 6 seconds here. Daniel Burke, another half-minute back as a result of that issue. And Enzo Filippo, actually, on the last lap here, has had problems, and he will drop down to 5th place. Luca D'Amico looks like he will hold on to 4th after all of that anyway. It was out of the final portion of the circuit, where indeed our race leader is about to end up now. So, wow, that's quite a moment. And he's still not going. Enzo Filippo having real problems here in the final moment. And he will have one more lap to do. I wonder whether he's out of fuel and he wants to let the leader lap him one more time so that he doesn't have to do another lap. We'll wait and see and talk about that afterwards. But either way, Sven Mackenberg's not worried about that right now. He is surely going to win this race. Into the final corner comes the German. And the 2.4 hours of Dubai, this RaceRoom ranked event, will go to Sven Mackenberg. by just over 4 seconds to his brother in the end. A fantastic race, capped off in the best possible way for Mackenberg as he comes across the line 5 seconds in front of his brother. Filippo will indeed come across the line there in 5th place, as I suspected. It's a it's a Mackenberg 1-2, Zach.
It really is. What a race for them. They'd have been, chuffed with that result. I'm sure they'll be loving it. It was Sven Mackenberg that took the sibling rivalry to the end, and well, fantastic stuff. Mike Stoffmill's got about a quarter of a lap left to go, and well, he himself, luck has fallen his way, of course, naturally, but he's done a brilliant job and seized his moments, taken all the shots, and well, he's done a brilliant job from start to finish in that KTM. And well, fantastic stuff. We thought the KTM was going to be quite competitive in that GT4 class, and well, it's done exactly that. Mike Stoffmill has just pretty much just been there or thereabouts all race long, and he's only got a couple more corners for him to take GT4 victory.
You've got to spare a thought for Marius Zabdir here in the GT4 category, and of course Cody Nikolakowski as well in the GTX category as well. But deserving race winners they are. Mike Stoffmill out the final corner, and he will win by nearly 13 seconds in the end. The downforce and the cornering ability of the KTM was too much for the rest in the end. Fantastic battles we had along the way, but Stoffmill wins it in GT4 camp. Fantastic races and battles involved within that class, but in the end it was always going to be a KTM that wins.
Yeah, such a shame for Zabdir DNFing from the race. He had such good pace, probably would have been able to take victory, but that is how it goes. So in the end, I'd say Stoffmill holding it down for the KTMs. But great to see as well, 5 different manufacturers in the top 5. Farkash, a great job just being there all race long and taking advantage of a couple of issues for drivers ahead from the likes of Zabdir and Filippo as well. So just showing how good of a BOP really these things can be. A great race was shown because of that, because of the difference in cornering speeds and straight line speeds between some of the classes and the cars. Great race overall, and great new content here on RaceRoom.
Certainly so. Great to see. We'll get those results up for you in a couple of moments' time once everyone's crossed the line. I think everybody just about has. But a fantastic race. Great battles involved within, and thoroughly enjoyable. I have to say, one of my favourite RaceRoom ranked events for quite some time here this year. I know we've not had too many so far in 2023, but it's been a pleasure to be along for the ride. I hope you've all enjoyed it at home as well here on YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed the afternoon. It's been thoroughly enjoyable to bring it to you. We do believe, by the way, we're waiting for somebody else to come across the line because we can't show you any race results just yet. But there we are. Everyone's cruising around at the moment and just enjoying the fact that they've gotten to the end of the race here, Zach, which is an achievement in itself. But fantastic battles around this circuit, and that surprised me in some way, I've got to say.
It was a very good race from start to finish. We weren't deprived of action whatsoever, and there was only a couple of dry spells, but they only really lasted for a lap or so, only about maybe 5-10 minutes max, where we were actually, quote unquote bored, I suppose. But there was always something to look at, always something to sink our teeth into, whether it was pitch strategy or whatever. Start to finish, both classes had action, drama, chaos, excitement, whatever you want, and well, it was 2.4 hours of greatness. And I agree, one of the best ranked races that we've had, but the bar was high, and somehow Dubai was able to rise to it.
It absolutely was, and as I say, hope you very much enjoyed.
Coming your way over the course of this season and this year of 2023, so do get yourself involved, because as you see, they are a lot of great fun, and I'm sure it'll be us again in the commentary booth for those. So we look forward to seeing you again for another fun evening of racing sometime soon.
Yeah, we do have one indeed coming up in the not too distant future, so very much look forward to bringing you that as we come along. But for now, that has been the 2.4 hours of Dubai. GTX and GT4 racing, not something we've seen so much in the recent past, but a great addition to the RaceRoom ranked events. Thanks very much to everybody who has been tuned in here over the course of the evening. It's been a pleasure to bring this one along to you. But for now, we will sign off for now. I've been Neil O'Leary alongside Cameron Roger and Zach Sweeney in the commentary booth. And until we see you very soon for the next RaceRoom ranked event, it's goodbye for now.